Chapter 189. The members of Akatsuki organization were all capable people from all walks of life. They were either powerful or had special abilities. For example, the immortal Haiden and Kakuzu, the absolute power combination of Itachi and Kisame, the oracle combination of Dustless and Konan, and the artistic combination that was about to be formed, all represented the different abilities of each other. Zetsu was the only independent existence in the Akatsuki, and he was solely responsible for the important task of intelligence. The intelligence was spread all over the world. Now that he said that the whereabouts of the Hachibi were unknown, how could Pain turn a deaf ear to it? He looked at Zetsu with doubt. The Hachibi is indeed untraceable. I have almost searched all over the world, but I couldn't find the Hachibi. Zetsu smiled bitterly, and his appearance was extremely realistic. He didn't look like he was lying. At the same time, he couldn't help but curse Dustless for not handing over the Hachibi. Especially Black Zetsu, he was really afraid that Pain would use the ability of Rinnegan to search his memory. Either the Hachibi has been killed or... The silent Uchiha Itachi opened his mouth, and his clear eyes revealed the light of wisdom as he said in a deep voice, "It has been captured and turned into a special existence similar to a psychic beast." Itachi hit the nail on the head and immediately pointed out the problem. It is indeed possible. Pain heard this and nodded. The bijou was very powerful for the world and chakra was almost infinite. It had the absolute strength to destroy the world and was almost invincible in the world. It was an existence that couldn't be resisted, but it also varied from person to person. Not to mention the Hachibi, even the Kyubi would only have a dead end. Therefore it sounded a bit shocking that the Hachibi was killed or captured by someone. After carefully thinking about it, it wasn't impossible. After all, there were many strong people in the world. Don't worry about the Hachibi for the time being, let's deal with the other bijou first. Waving his hand, Pain no longer worried about this issue. He wasn't the kind of person who liked to waste time. Instead of thinking about this kind of unanswered question, it was better to do something meaningful. The current wild bijou is the Rokubi who betrayed the mist not long ago. After the fall of Yagura, the Sanbai is also wild and the Nanabai of the waterfall village. Speaking of this, Zetsu's voice hesitated. A few years ago, Obito used his Sharingan to control Yagura and carried out a bloody massacre. After that, he was overthrown by the ninjas led by Tsurumi Mei. Yagura was also killed and Sanbai was naturally in a wild state. Leave waterfall villages Jinchuriki to me and Haiden. I know that Jinchuriki. Kakuzu's oily green eyes flashed with ruthless radiance. He suddenly recalled that little girl of the past, and the hesitation in his eyes was quickly replaced by determination. Ever since he joined Akatsuki, the last bit of benevolence in his heart was thoroughly obliterated. It's not difficult to see that Kakuzu has bet everything on Akatsuki, and everything in the past has disappeared. Even if the Nanabai's Jinchuriki girl has a good relationship with him, Kakuzu swore that he won't let her go easily. The reason is that he gave everything to Waterfall Village, but Waterfall Village trampled on his contribution and made it worthless. Everyone has countless stories behind them. The sharp-eyed Dustless naturally saw Kakuzu's old face and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Everyone in the Akatsuki organization has countless sorrows and unbearable pasts, and Uchiha Madara is no exception. Leave the Rokubi to me and Itachi. I know the hiding place of that monster and I'm familiar with the Mist Village. I also know Yugao's Jinchuriki. Kisame said in a deep voice. He didn't have a good impression of the Mist Village. Let alone catching a bijou, even if they asked him to plot against his former teammate, he wouldn't hesitate to raise his butcher's knife. No problem. Itachi's deep and clear eyes opened as he said faintly. He didn't care that the opponent was a bijou. They had absolute confidence in taking down the so-called bijou. Especially Itachi and Kisame. The former was both intelligent and brave, and the latter was also a brave existence. Even if they were besieged by the mist, they could leave safely. As for the remaining Sanbai, Pain looked at Dustless and Konan. Obviously he wanted to give this task to them. The art group in the distance was obviously still in a quarrel. It was definitely unrealistic to give this task to them, and Deidara was still very young. He didn't have the ability to catch the Sanbai. Leave it to me. Xiaonan took a step forward, completely ignoring whether Wu Chen agreed or not. She took it for granted and was unusually decisive. She completely and simply ignored Wu Chen's existence. No problem. Glancing at the indifferent Conan, Dustless was too lazy to argue with her. At the same time he began to calculate in his heart. In a few years Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke will graduate from the Ninja Academy. From then on, it will directly open the curtain of the era. 3 days later in the mist village of the Land of Water. Staring at the giant village shrouded in mist in the distance, Dustless's heart was inevitably agitated, and he couldn't help but recall the enchanting girl from a few years ago. Now that he hasn't seen her for a few years, Terumi May has become a Mizukage and this woman is quite capable. She took care of the mist village in an orderly manner. It can be said that the village recovered the fastest after the 3 wars. It's really unpredictable. Let's go, Conan. After a few sighs, Dustless began to walk to the hiding place of the sandbai provided by Zetsu. At the same time the cold light in his eyes gathered more and more. As Zetsu said, the current sandbai was just in a pure wild state and no one cared about its existence. As long as he used the power of the Sharingan to bind it, there would be no problem. The only difference was that the original sandbai was defeated by Deidara and Sasori, but now it's Conan and Dustless's turn to tame it in advance. Chapter 190. There was no doubt about his ability to investigate. His clones were all over the world, there was almost nothing he didn't know. He could even ruthlessly say that as long as the kid wanted to, he would definitely know which bathhouse the Sandame was spying on today, and which girl's figure he was looking at. With this information, Dustless and Conan didn't waste any time and went straight to the hiding place of the sandbai. Raising his gaze slightly, his sharp eagle-like gaze swept straight ahead. His oppressive gaze pierced through the layers of thick fog, taking in the entire scene in front of him. After careful observation, a puzzled expression emerged on Wu Chen's face. Strange. The mist ninjas seemed to be capturing the sandbai. Frowning slightly, Dustless muttered to himself. He still remembered that since the fall of Yagura, sandbai was in a natural wild state. No one cared whether he was alive or dead. He was left alone in the sea. Sandbai also hid in the deep sea. During this period he didn't do anything bad. It seems that all the countries are on guard against us. The mist spent a lot of effort to capture the sandbai just to prevent us from capturing the sandbai. Suddenly, Dustless remembered that the old man Inoki exposed Akatsuki a few days ago. He was afraid that the whole world was on guard against the tailed beast in his village. Now catching sandbai was also expected. Then we can only send them all to heaven. Xiaonan's eyes flashed with hostility when she heard this. Her petite figure was filled with a chill, just like a fallen angel from hell. Her entire body was embellished with a sense of coldness. Dustless glanced at Conan and shook his head. There was no need to fight the mist. Especially with the current situation, he wasn't sure if May could seal the sandbai, especially since there was no suitable Jinchuriki. A Jinchuriki wasn't something that could be pulled in casually. Gradually approaching the deep sea where the sandbai lived, a large number of mist ninjas gathered here. Everyone's sight was focused on the tall May. Although the distance between Dustless and May was quite far, his dynamic vision was excellent. He could still see the enchanting figure. I haven't seen you for a few years, but you're getting prettier. His eyes swept over May's body, but his expression was as calm as water. His family's tigress, Otsutsuki Haruo, wasn't worse than May. The former was as cold as an iceberg and belonged to the arrogant type. May had a seductive personality. They were two completely opposite existences. Dustless was also purely admiring. His heart had settled down for several years. He had long been as steady as Mount Tai and as calm as autumn water. I didn't see your nature as a pervert. Xiaonan turned her head and looked at Wu Chen with a sneer. She kept a distance from Wu Chen. Her watery eyes were full of disdain. She didn't expect Wu Chen to have such an attribute. I haven't seen you for a few years, but you... Wu Chen didn't get angry but laughed when he heard that. He deliberately looked around Xiaonan's body and then his eyes stopped on Xiaonan's body. Suddenly, a teasing smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. His words made Xiaonan almost vomit blood. You've aged a lot, Conan. Fearing that Xiaonan deliberately couldn't hear that he was ridiculing him, Wu Chen deliberately dragged out his intonation. His voice was strange, giving people a kind of nondescript feeling. Conan's mouth twitched fiercely. Although she hid it very well and tried to keep her calm, Dustless still felt that his body was locked by a cold, murderous aura. Woo! At this moment the cries of wild beasts resounded through the endless sky. Huge ripples suddenly appeared on the calm surface of the water. The impact of the waves that could topple mountains and overturn seas also spread out in all directions. As far as the eye could see, the originally calm surface of the sea gradually revealed a gigantic beast. It was shaped like a tortoise, and there were uneven layers of sharp protrusions on its back. It looked exceptionally tough, as if it was the strongest defense that could not be broken through. The ferocious beast's face looked uncertain as it looked at the surrounding mist village. Aisabu's eyes were cold and murderous, and his body was full of powerful chakra waves. All tailed beasts hated humans, and Ichibi to Kyubi were no exception. Aisabu opened his mouth and spat out a black energy ball. Chakra continued to surge out of his body, increasing his power. The giant Bijudama continued to expand in size, and the constant compression of power made everyone's face change, especially Mei. As the fifth Mizukage of the Mist Village, she naturally knew the horror of tailed beasts better than these ordinary ninjas. Hurry up and evacuate. Without thinking, Mei ordered the Mist ninjas to retreat quickly. The power of Bijudama wasn't something that anyone could easily resist. Even if she was a Mizukage, she might not be able to escape. She knows when to retreat. Dustless, who was secretly watching, nodded slightly. The power of Bijudama couldn't be contaminated by ordinary ninjas. Just a light touch and they would be crushed to pieces. Especially now that Aisabu didn't hold back at all. Terumi Mei knew that the number of people couldn't change the reality. Ordering the Mist ninjas to retreat was the only way I could do. It seems that we don't need to do anything. Looking at the scattered ninjas, Conan whispered. She immediately had a look of, it's none of my business. She quietly waited for the upcoming one-sided massacre. Aisabu is not that woman's opponent. Dustless faintly glanced at Conan and shook his head. Aisabu might be able to scare others, but it wasn't enough to scare a strong woman like Mei. If he didn't make a move, Aisabu would definitely be killed by Mei. Since you are about to be locked in a cage, I will reluctantly help you and save you from physical pain. Staring at the giant Bijudama, Dustless's mouth raised a touch of coldness, and his eyes began to twist sharply. The evil eye power made Conan beside him tremble uncomfortably. The scarlet eternal Mangekyo Sharingan was particularly terrifying, and even Conan could vaguely see the afterglow of blood on Dustless's body. Chapter 191. Conan looked at the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan in Dustless's eyes. She could feel that the power in Dustless's left and right eyes had a qualitative improvement. It was completely different from the time when he fought her, Yahiko and Nagato. Although it's exactly the same as the original Sharingan, there is a gap in the strength of the eyes. Conan's beautiful eyes stared at the scarlet eyes, and she couldn't help but worry secretly. She was afraid that Dustless would suddenly attack one day, and Pain wouldn't have any means to catch him, because the fluctuations in the scarlet eyes weren't something that Nagato could resist at all. She even said that there was a dimension of surprise, and her eyes unconsciously looked at Dustless's handsome face, trying to see his purpose. It's actually very simple to deal with this kind of beast that can't resist the Sharingan. There's no need to face it head-on. Seeing Conan looking at him in a daze, Dustless just smiled, and then his eyes seemed to have a bloody light in them. In the next second, the raging sea instantly returned to calm, and the black energy ball in the mouth of the sandbai stopped growing, and the three thick tails that were constantly slapping the water also returned to calm, as if nothing happened on the water surface. Aisabu's eyes were emotionless, empty and gray, and instantly became like a docile kitten, and its majestic hostility disappeared, and it obediently lay on the water surface. Only the big eyes of the sandbai faintly showed the same five-pointed star as Dustless's eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. This is... Terumi Mei's pretty face looked at the well-behaved sandbai, and her enchanting face was full of disbelief, and her seductive little mouth turned into an O shape. It was the first time in her life that she saw a well-behaved bijou. Little South America's eyes widened, and she also looked at the sandbai that was as well-behaved as a child in an instant, and her heart began to fluctuate violently. What kind of level has this guy's eyes reached? He just glanced at the sandbai carelessly and her pretty face was heavy, and her chest seemed to be pressed by 1,000 pounds of stone, making her almost suffocated and cold all over. She couldn't help but think about Dustless's motives and purposes. With his unprecedented strength, he was willing to join the Akatsuki organization and submit to pain. It was obviously impossible for him to have no purpose. While Conan was thinking, suddenly felt that her cold little hand was grabbed by a pair of hot hands, and her heart trembled fiercely. "Let's go." Dustless didn't pay attention to Conan's expression. Golden Luo, the two disappeared as if they crossed thousands of space in an instant, and they came to the beach in the blink of an eye. Stared at the Sei's serene look, Dustless frowned, eyebrows its eyebrows. Staring at the peaceful look, S's. And disappeared. Conan. His eyes looked at the void in front of him indifferently. Dustless's face was expressionless. He could clearly see the sky in front of him. Trumi Mei, this clever little girl, intended to take advantage of this opportunity to completely tame the Sanbai. I understand. Her cold eyes were like an eagle's, jumping with cold light with endless killing intent. She stared at Trumi Mei, who was rushing towards the three. Her body suddenly showed signs of folding paper, and a huge pair of wings suddenly extended from her back. Conan floated to the sky with this force. She flew straight towards Trumi Mei. "I'm looking forward to this battle." Seeing that Conan left, Dustless chuckled slightly. "Who is stronger and who is weaker? I'm afraid that a fierce battle is inevitable." He retracted his gaze, looked at the motionless Sanbai and walked towards it. "Damn brat." Conan, who was floating in the sky, had a pale face, and her pretty face was obviously still red. Her fists were clenched tightly and a lot of sweat could be seen. Compared with her usual dignified and indifferent appearance, the difference was particularly big. Xiaonan didn't have time to react to Wu Chen's sneak attack just now. When she came back to her senses, it was already too late. She had already been brought to the beach not far from Sanbai by that abnormal speed. This allowed Dustless to take advantage of her. In fact, Dustless didn't have any other thoughts in his mind. He simply wanted to complete the task quickly. He instinctively grabbed Conan's soft hand. As for the feeling of ecstasy, he didn't savor it. "You used to be a part of the Jubi, but now you're really fragile." Looking at the Sanbai in front of him who was controlled by him, Dustless shook his head. He was not optimistic about these bijou. The bijou in the eyes of normal people, for some people such as Uchiha Madara and Hashirama, they were just small pets that could be easily pinched. Boom. 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 An ear-piercing roar suddenly sounded. He looked up and saw a huge mushroom cloud rising in the distant sky. The dark smoke was hanging in the sky. The impact of the explosion set off a huge wave toward Wu Chen and Sanbai. The strong hurricane blew his clothes. These two girls aren't easy to deal with. Looking at the two beautiful figures who had already fought in the distance, Dustless looked at them with interest. At the same time, he looked at the monstrous wave that was attacking them. He was sure that Conan did this deliberately. Her vengeful heart is really strong. Dustless looked at the wave that was more than 10 meters high coming toward him and the Sanbai without fear. He shook his head slightly, and his left eye suddenly turned into Rinnegan, and a majestic repulsion spread out. Super Shinra Tensei. Boom. 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 With Dustless and the Sanbai as the center, the sea suddenly sank, and an irresistible wave swallowed the sea within a few kilometers. Everything that touched this repulsion disappeared with the wind. The wave that was more than 10 meters high before was also flattened and disappeared. The cloudy sky suddenly became clear. With Rinnegan, Dustless could be said to have interpreted the power to the limit. Chapter 192. The detonation talisman fell into the sea, causing countless chain reactions. It was like the end of the world. In an instant, the entire sea was detonated. The entire sky turned fiery red and the fire burned dozens of meters high. Boom, boom, boom. The sea was shrouded in explosions for a few minutes. The deafening roar roared unscrupulously in the sky. Everyone, including Dustless, was shocked. The power condensed by thousands of detonation talismans was something no one could understand. Did she really kill Trumi Mei? Looking at the scene of the battle in the distance, Dustless took a deep breath. Looking at the scale of the explosion, even if Trumi Mei was really killed by Conan, Dustless would still be suspicious. There was no one on the quiet sea, only Conan in the sky. Buzz, buzz, buzz. the surface of the sea under his feet suddenly trembled and a vast ripple appeared. Feeling the strangeness in the depths of the river, Dustless's eyes subconsciously looked underwater. His sharp eyes penetrated the heavy barriers, and the hazy figure under the water suddenly came into view. There was no doubt that the beautiful figure in the depths of the water was naturally Terumi Mei, but Dustless turned his head unnaturally because at this time Terumi Mei was quite embarrassed. Not to mention that her clothes were soaked. Although she dove into the depths of the sea to avoid the explosion, her clothes were burned. The left half of her body was exposed to the outside. The snow-white skin made people's heart flutter, and the clothes in front of her were also burned away. With Terumi Mei's vigorous movements, you can see the inside of her body. Conan didn't do this on purpose, right? The corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was no wonder that Dustless thought so. The exposed parts of Terumi Mei's body belonged to the most mysterious type. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was intentional. Bang bang bang. Suddenly several thick water pillars shot out from the calm sea surface, piercing towards Xiaonan in the sky like sharp barbs. The tips of the water droplets froze into ice, seeming as if they were going to poke holes in Xiaonan's body. It could be seen that in the previous battle, Terumi Mei's heart was also filled with anger, especially when the private parts of her body were exposed. How could she not be angry? However, she didn't know that Dustless was secretly observing her. Otherwise, Terumi Mei would have gone completely berserk. Child's play, this kind of move can't shake me. Xiaonan looked coldly at the water droplet that was charging at her. Her lips were filled with coldness. She casually waved her hand and countless explosive talismans fell from her body. She controlled the timing perfectly. The moment the huge water droplet was about to pierce through Xiaonan, it exploded with a bang. Bang bang bang. Tens of water columns were instantly blasted into pieces. The water splashed in the air and fell back to the ground. The sparkling water droplets reflected Xiaonan's dark shadow like mirrors. Xiaonan was shocked, and she looked at the black shadow reflected by the water droplets with an ugly face. Worthy of being the fifth Mizukichi. She hid herself in the water column in advance to avoid the impact of the explosive talismans and looked for a powerful opportunity to sneak attack. Xiaonan thought secretly. Although she was surprised by Terumi Mei's combat awareness and skills, she was still able to deal with Terumi Mei. Her body was like a broken mirror and countless folds appeared again. Obviously, Xiaonan had realized the existence of Terumi Mei behind her. Want to escape? It's not that easy. Terumi Mei's mouth raised a cold smile, and her gem-like pupils emitted a sharp cold light. Her thin red lips gently opened and a clay-colored mist was spat out. Lava release, melting monster technique. The sand-colored solution instantly wrapped Xiaonan, and the unknown solution was rapidly sticky and corrosive, eroding Xiaonan's body. It seems to be an unknown Kekkei Genkai and its power is so good. Her pupils suddenly shrank and Xiaonan looked at the explosive talismans wrapped around her body slowly melting away. Her chakra soared to the limit, and she escaped from the sand-colored clay layer at the fastest speed in her life. At the same time she detonated the explosive talismans all over her body. Boom boom boom. An endless amount of fire suddenly rose from the inside of the sand-colored clay ball. The blazing fire spread out along with the endless waves of air. The corrosive liquid that was wrapped around the ball was pushed to the sides. Only then did Xiaonan escape from it safely. Sure enough, I can't be careless. Xiaonan's eyebrows slightly wrinkled, and the murderous intent on her face gushed out like a tide. Xiaonan looked at the proud Terumi Mei and her eyes were even colder. Although she escaped from the layers of lava release, at the critical moment, Conan was not unscathed. At the very least she was like Terumi Mei now. It's fair this way. Terumi Mei looked at Xiaonan with a smile. The latter's clothes were also eroded by lava release. Xiaonan was similar to her before and her skin was exposed to the sun. Of course there was also Dustless. I won't let you go. Xiaonan said with a gloomy expression. A cold aura emerged between her brows, trying to drive away the unnaturalness on her face. After all, Wuxian was watching this scene with relish in the distance. It's really a rare scene in 100 years. It seems that my Tensigan's insight ability can finally come in handy. Although the location of the battle was a few kilometers away, Dustless could still clearly perceive that Conan and Terumi Mei were almost in a state of undress. At the moment he exerted the insight ability of Tensigan to the limit. The situation of Xiao Nan and Terumi Mei was naturally in his eyes. The corner of his mouth raised a strange smile. It was also fun to watch the fight between the two heaven's favored children. Chapter 193. In the hot room filled with steam, one couldn't even see their own fingers. Everywhere was filled with thick fog and everything was gray. Looking at the ground, a luxurious pool quickly came into view. Bubbles gushed out from the bottom of the pool from time to time. The water temperature wasn't hot and it was very suitable for bathing. Kazu, I can be sure that those 4 people must be working hard to catch the tailed beasts now. How can they be as comfortable as us? They are simply stupid. An arrogant voice resounded through the white space. Looking around, it was Fei Duan with a smug smile on his face. He leaned naked against the warm pool with his eyes closed comfortably. This is not bad, they must be catching the tailed beasts. The robust man nodded. On his back there were 4 masks with different expressions. It was strange and terrifying. Especially the wounds and traces of healing all over his body, which added to the horror of this man. The 2 people who are currently soaking in the hot spring are Fei Duan and Kazu. Originally, the 2 of them came to look for the 7-tailed Jinchuriki, but after searching hard they didn't find any trace of it. Fei Duan simply brought Kakuzu to soak in the hot spring and enjoy the life of a normal human. But then again, as if thinking of something, Fei Duan looked at the mask on Kakuzu's back curiously and said in disbelief, "Can you really understand the relaxation of soaking in the hot spring? I feel that you are like a skeleton with an empty shell. You have lost your original inner soul." Looking at Kakuzu, who was hollowed out, Fei Duan seemed to be surprised that Kakuzu was still alive. His hands patted the mask on Kakuzu's back uncontrollably, and his face was full of curiosity. "I have indeed lost my soul and I am living like a walking corpse." Slightly glancing at Fei Duan, he looked like a curious baby. After looking at his innocent face, the corner of his mouth raised into a sneer. "Once upon a time I was like you now, a little brat who didn't know anything. I am not a little brat who doesn't know anything." Slamming the white mask on Kakuzu's back, Fei Duan spat at Kakuzu angrily, then leisurely returned to the previous place and lay down again. "However, it was also those guys who allowed me to see the essence of this world. From a certain perspective, if it weren't for them pushing me into the dark hell, it's not impossible for me to have died long ago. I have to thank them for being able to live until now." As if thinking of the past, Kakuzu said to himself with mixed feelings. Even Fei Duan, who didn't understand anything, felt the same and fell silent. The Akatsuki organization was a gathering of elites from all over the world, but it was also the embodiment of tragedy. Behind each and every one of them, there was a bitter and unbearable past. Time passed unknowingly, and in the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. "Feng, I think she's here." Glancing at Fei Duan, Kakuzu sneered again and then looked at the Waterfall Village ninjas who were singing and dancing around the bonfire, and his eyes were filled with monstrous hostility and beast-like madness. He smiled and said, "You are too stupid, Fei Duan. You still can't see my purpose. It's really disappointing. Don't you think it's interesting to be killed by the person you trusted the most in the past?" Chapter 194. Haydn looked at the crazy Kakuzu with astonishment. He didn't expect Kakuzu to have such a vicious idea. This kind of insidious killing method can no longer be described as vicious. It's simply insane. "Then I'll accompany you in this play, but this won't happen again." Looking at the ruthless expression on Kakuzu's face, Haydn nodded uncomfortably. In his heart he secretly slandered Kakuzu. If he angered this old man, maybe he would join forces with Sasori to capture him, and then make Sasori into a material specimen. Fei Duan knew that Scorpion of the Red Sand was after his body. After saying that, Haydn took off his black trench coat of the Akatsuki, revealing his strong physique. His whole body had indescribable curves. Without waiting for Kakuzu to speak, Haydn jumped out with his 3-section great scythe in his hand. His expression was fierce and his whole body was like a hurricane. Against the backdrop of the night, Haydn was like a death god coming out of the forest. Especially the cold light of the three-section great scythe, it made people's scalp numb, and their nerves almost collapsed. Who is it? Although these ninjas of Waterfall Village are still young and weak, they are not rookies. At least they can distinguish murderous aura. So when Haydn deliberately released his murderous aura, these kids noticed it. Useless trash, of course, I'm the one who will tear you to pieces. Haydn's cheeks were ferocious. He was the slowest person in the Akatsuki, but for these kids who haven't experienced the world, his speed was absolutely unparalleled. Poochie. A cold light flashed in the dark night sky, and they could vaguely see a young figure being cut in half at the waist. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. Haydn was ferocious like a wolf in a flock of sheep. He seemed to have forgotten the task given to him by Kokuzu. For a time he just enjoyed the pleasure of killing. In just a few minutes, the ninjas of the Waterfall Village were slaughtered. Useless bastard, it seems that it's my fault. I shouldn't have overestimated his IQ. The corner of Kokudu's mouth twitched violently as he secretly scolded himself for being an idiot. How could someone like Fei Duan, who was easily controlled by emotions, casually give him a mission? Seeing his painstakingly planned plan fail, Kokuzu sighed in disappointment, then walked over gloomily, planning to catch them all in one fell swoop with Haydn. Clang. The buzzing sound of steel colliding spread throughout the dark forest, setting off faint sparks that disappeared in an instant. These two brats are not bad. Dustless was stunned when he felt that his unstoppable scythe had been stopped. Through the sparks that had disappeared before, he saw that the two strong boys had actually blocked his attack. Although he only used less than 20% of his strength, these two brats could actually block it, which really surprised Fei Duan. Why aren't you leaving, Feng? The taller boy among them was struggling to hold on. His small face was full of sweat, and it was obvious that he was about to reach his limit. He shouted angrily at the girl behind him, "You are far more important to the village than us. The future of the village is all on your head." "Let's go, Feng." The other boy, who was slightly shorter, shouted in a deep voice. His eyes were filled with determination as if he was facing death. Obviously he was going to fight Fei Duan. "I won't go." The girl with short blue hair choked as she looked at Fei Duan's ferocious eyes without fear. She tried to keep calm, but when she saw the sharp scarlet scythe she was still frightened, and there was an unconcealable fear in her watery eyes. "Go. Don't worry, I will send you all to hell and then you will naturally meet in the underworld." Fei Duan sneered at the two brats and his eyes flashed with praise. These two brats seemed to be only 12 or 13 years old, but they had the strength of Chunin, and they could barely be regarded as geniuses. At the same time, Fei Duan's palm slightly exerted force, and he immediately cut the previous tall boy in half. Bright red blood splattered all over the blue-haired girl's face. She looked in horror at Fei Duan, who was like a demon king of hell. Maple finally gave up on the insistence in her heart, and quickly ran back into the dark forest behind her. Although it's different from the plan, the result is still the same. Seeing this scene, Kokuzu immediately followed without hesitation, and his green eyes were shining with a fierce light, and he rushed up like a ghost. For Kokuzu, who had the strength of a Kage, it was easy to catch up with such a little girl. Who are you?" Feng thought that the person in front of her was an accomplice of Fei Duan, and she thought that she would die on the spot, but after waiting for a long time, the person in front of her didn't kill her. She opened her eyes in horror, and what reflected in her cheeks was an unexpectedly familiar face. Although the person in front of her was particularly terrifying in Feng's eyes, he was particularly intimate. "Feng, it's been a long time." The feeling Kokuzu gave at this moment was completely different. His face was ferocious, but he had a warm smile, although it looked a bit strange. "Wu." Feng immediately lay on Kokuzu's leg and began to sob. Her tear-stained face bloomed with an angelic smile. Full of hope, she pointed to the place behind her and cried, "All the ninjas in the village were killed by that scythe bastard, you must avenge them." The scythe bastard Feng was talking about was undoubtedly Fei Duan. "Of course, no problem, I will definitely kill that scythe bastard and avenge your friends." With a smile on his face, Kokuzu promised, and at the same time he took Feng's little hand and walked to the place where the battle took place. However, as if she couldn't wait, Feng left Kokuzu behind and ran alone to the place where the battle took place. "If you want to hate that you were born in an ugly village like the Waterfall Village. Goodbye, Feng." With a cold smile on his face, Kakuzu took the opportunity to throw the black kunai in his hand straight toward the little girl's abdomen. Chapter 195. Puchi. The sharp dagger pointlessly pierced through the girl's abdomen, leaving a bloody hole in her body. The hideous wound was a mess of flesh and blood. Intense pain instantly spread throughout her body. Young Lady Maple couldn't bear it and fell to the ground. She rolled and crawled a few times before stopping. "Yo, Kazu, you're finally done." Haydn looked at Kakuzu and waved his hand, indicating that he was here. However, he was ignored by Kakuzu, who didn't even look at him. This made Haydn very angry, and he cursed Kakuzu for burning the bridge after crossing the river. "How do you feel, Maple?" Kakuzu's face was expressionless as he looked at the half-dead Maple. His voice wasn't as gentle as before. Instead, it was cold and filled with killing intent. "I'm not asking you how painful your wounds are. I'm asking you how it feels to fall from heaven to hell. Is it unforgettable?" Kakuzu's voice was filled with killing intent as he looked at the half-dead Maple. Kakuzu's voice was filled with killing intent. At this time, Haydn put on the Akatsuki uniform again and stood beside Kakuzu. Why did you do this?" Maple looked at Kakuzu in disbelief, and her small face was full of shock. The Kakuzu in front of her was completely different from the previous Kakuzu. He was covered with coldness from the depths of hell, and his temperament was isolated from the world. "Do you feel pain?" Kakuzu glanced at Maple faintly, and the corner of his mouth raised a smile, and he said indifferently, "It seems that you finally understand how I felt. This pain of falling from heaven to hell was given to me by the people of Waterfall Village. If I kill you now as the hope of Waterfall Village, you will fall. They will also understand the feeling of falling from heaven to hell, and they will never be able to let it go." Kakuzu's tone was extremely harsh. Decades ago, he received a mission from the higher-ups of Waterfall Village to assassinate the first Hokage. After Kakuzu arrived in Konoha, he fought the first Hokage, but he didn't expect to be defeated by the first Hokage's would release. After several turns, he finally escaped from the tiger's mouth and returned to Waterfall Village. After returning to the village, Kakuzu faced a heavy punishment for failing the mission and was mercilessly imprisoned in prison. The ninja who gambled his life for the village was cruelly treated. Since then, Kakuzu was pushed far away from hell, so he escaped from prison with a very strong hatred. A little brat will always be a little brat. I can't understand Lord's feelings. Looking at the unconscious Feng, Kakudo curled his lips, and the sadness in his eyes disappeared. He said to Fei Duan, "Take her away. This way the mission will be considered completed." Without even looking at Maple, Kakuzu turned and left. 7 days later in the Rain Village. The first group to return was naturally Dustless and Konan, the second was Kakuzu and Haydn, and the last was Uchiha Itachi and Kisame. Under Pain's force, although Sasori and Deidara still had contradictions, they successfully formed a new team. All the wild-tailed beasts were collected. Dustless thought that the matter was over, but he didn't expect that Uzumaki Nagato's brain was twitching, and he continued to make money. According to Pain, it was to gather a lot of money for future use. However, whether it was Dustless or the other members of the Akatsuki, they all scoffed at Pain's statement. Therefore, after the collection of tailed beasts was completed, in addition to the Jinchuriki of the major ninja villages, the members of the Akatsuki began to embark on the task of earning extra money, accepting various tasks all day long to earn a lot of money. This work took a few more years. Uzumaki Naruto finally graduated. It's really hard, but this day has finally come. In a dark room unknown to others, Dustless looked at Zetsu in front of him, nodded with satisfaction and breathed a sigh of relief. The day he had been waiting for finally came. Just yesterday, Uzumaki Naruto finally graduated successfully and became a genin, and so did Uchiha Sasuke. But Uzumaki Naruto's ability to resist attacks is really strong. I controlled Kyuubi to attack Konoha twice, and that kid could still survive countless taunts. It's really a miracle. Dustless was speechless, and he couldn't help but look at Uzumaki Naruto in a new light. His powerful positive energy made Dustless ashamed. According to his expectations, even if Uzumaki Naruto explodes with Kyuubi's power, it's not impossible to destroy Konoha. That kid is really strong. Even in the face of the taunts of the whole village, he survived. In the past few years, White Zetsu secretly spied on Uzumaki Naruto according to Dustless's instructions. It can be said that he witnessed Uzumaki Naruto's childhood. How about Uchiha Sasuke? Then thinking of his third brother who lived in the shadow of Uchiha Itachi, Dustless suddenly asked with a little expectation in his tone. Dustless-sama, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. This time Black Zetsu, who never spoke much in front of him, said, Uchiha Sasuke's performance is ordinary. He lives in Itachi's shadow all day long, training himself almost like hell. That's really hard work. Dustless smiled faintly. It seems that kid hates Uchiha Itachi deeply, but if he knew that he was the one who killed Uchiha Itachi and forced the Uchiha clan to perish, what kind of expression would he have? Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and a girl named Haruno Sakura were all assigned to the same class. Their teacher is an elite jonin named Kakashi, who recently took the task of escorting an old man to the Wave Country. White Zetsu reported truthfully he didn't dare to hide anything and continued. Also recently the leader of Konoha's root division Shimura Danzo has frequently contacted Orochimaru, the Sand Hidden Village and other villages. The specific purpose is unknown. Don't mind the clown. Dustless waved his hand indicating that there is no need to worry about this kind of trivial matter. He just smiled casually. It's unrealistic for a floater to shake the world. Chapter 196. Shimura Danzo's dream of being the Hokage will never be extinguished. As long as he doesn't become the Hokage, or if he doesn't die, his dream of being the Hokage will always burn in his heart, driving away his reason until the day he becomes the Hokage. But this is a good opportunity to take advantage of it. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless secretly despised Shimura Danzo. He's afraid that he wants to use this Chunin exam as an opportunity to attack Sandame's prestige. It's best if he can pull Sandame down from the position of Hokage and replace him. Dustless-sama, you mean? White Zetsu looked at Dustless with a puzzled face. Black Zetsu was silent, pretending not to know anything, and just quietly waiting for Dustless's explanation. Dustless just smiled faintly and didn't say much. After a moment of contemplation, he suddenly formed a seal with one hand, and the ground suddenly cracked, and 3 rotten coffins suddenly emerged from the depths of the ground. Sandame has lived for most of his life and he knows too many things. He's an antique from decades ago and his time has come to an end. There are many people who want him dead, so we don't need to do anything. Dustless quietly looked at the 3 coffins in front of him and he sneered again and again. The 3 coffins in front of him were the first Hokage, second Hokage and fourth Hokage. In fact, when he attacked Konoha 12 years ago, Dustless secretly transferred the bodies of Hashirama and Tobirama. At that time, although Hashirama's Edo Tensei body was destroyed by him using Yin-Yang release, his soul was not sealed. The same was true for Tobirama. As long as he used Edo Tensei again, he could still summon the 2 of them. As for Minato, he was directly killed by Dustless, and his body was perfectly preserved until now. Is it possible that Dustless-sama means to give Orochimaru the bodies of the Hokage? Black Zetsu immediately understood Dustless's meaning. Orochimaru's grievances with Sandame are known to the world. I'm afraid that after getting these precious corpses he will immediately attack Konoha during the Chunin exam. The grudges between Orochimaru and Sandame are not shallow. The 2 can even be said to be irreconcilable existences. If there is an opportunity to kill Sandame, he will not let it go. Indeed, let Orochimaru help me kill Sandame-sama. There is no need for us to do it ourselves. Dustless nodded slightly and admitted indifferently, then immediately frowned. Orochimaru was also a scheming person. If these 3 coffins were sent to his door like this, even if he was stupid he would know that someone was cheating him. Because the corpses of Shodame, Nidame, and Yondame have completely disappeared since Dustless attacked Konoha. Suddenly jumping to the door of Otogekure, Orochimaru was suspicious. It's good to pass them to Orochimaru through Kabuto's hands. After pondering for a while, Black Zetsu suggested, Kabuto is Orochimaru's spy. We can pass the corpses of the past Hokage to him through his hands. Orochimaru should not be suspicious if it's from his trusted hands. This is a good idea, it's worth a try. Dustless nodded. Orochimaru really trusted Kabuto and regarded him as his right-hand man. It's better to give the corpses of the past Hokage to Orochimaru than Dustless himself. put all the corpses of the past Hokage in Danzo's root. With the corner of his mouth raised in disdain, Wuxian sneered. In this way the origin of the corpses can be clearly explained. Orochimaru knew Shimura Danzo's way of doing things, and he knew that Shimura Danzo was the one who secretly hid the corpses of Hokage and used them to secretly study forbidden jutsu. Orochimaru is eager for the abilities of Shodame and Nidame, who are deified by the world. Now with the help of Minato's corpse, I think he will completely tear apart Konoha's face. He can't wait to implement his plan of destruction. Shimura Danzo is also trying to be clever, and in the end he only benefited Tsunade. Dustless said. Orochimaru's attack on Konoha was not worried at all. Instead it was Shimura Danzo who led the wolf into the house. The so-called Chunin exam was nothing more than a blow to Sandame's prestige. As a result, Orochimaru, a ferocious snake, bit Sandame to death, and Konoha itself suffered great losses. And in the end the person who got the throne of the fifth Hokage was Tsunade. Zetsu, send the corpses of the three to the root. Remember to do it quickly and without leaving any traces. Remember not to let others find out that it has something to do with us. Dustless waved his hand at Zetsu with a dignified tone. Understood, Dustless-sama. Zetsu nodded, and then his body sank into the depths of the ground. The three coffins Dustless summoned before also disappeared. Obviously they were taken to Konoha by White Zetsu. Zetsu's action was fast enough. Of course he didn't have the courage to disobey Dustless's order. That night he sent the corpses of the past Hokage to the root. And in just a few days Kabuto, who was secretly responsible for contacting Shimura Danzo, accidentally found the corpses of the past Hokage, and without any hesitation he stole them and gave them to Orochimaru. This was also the reason why the Kyuubi broke out again a few years ago, and the root department was destroyed on a large scale. Otherwise, with Kabuto's strength he wouldn't have been able to steal anything from the root department. After Orochimaru got the corpses of the first, second and third Hokage, he was like a treasure. Almost all day long he worked hard in the laboratory. Just like Dustless thought at first, he suspected that someone was tricking him, and even guessed that Kabuto had been bribed, but as time passed, Orochimaru's suspicion faded. Kabuto had no reason to betray him, and the corpses of the past Hokage were also real. Orochimaru also felt that Kabuto's origin was reasonable. He knew Shimura Danzo's ambition. As Dustless expected, Orochimaru began to plan a sneak attack on Konoha in detail. He was determined to wait until the Chunin exam to completely wipe out Konoha's ninja village. Chapter 197. Since Orochimaru got the corpses of the Hokage, he carried out a series of crazy experiments such as human experiments, cell experiments, and the so-called curse experiments. Everything related to the Hokage's corpses was forcibly added by Orochimaru. Even if most of them were insignificant, they couldn't resist Orochimaru's enthusiasm. In Orochimaru's laboratory, there were a lot of green liquid gas, all of which were his various experimental bodies. Everyone couldn't help but sigh at Orochimaru's dedication to the Hokage's corpses. Orochimaru-sama, the fourth Kazekage of the Sand-Hidden Village, hopes to form an alliance with us to launch a sneak attack on Konoha. Next to Orochimaru, Kabuto reported the current situation respectfully. In addition to being undercover in Konoha, he usually took time to come back and see. Of course, this was also Orochimaru's idea. Fourth Kazekage Raza is really sensitive. Orochimaru, who was doing experiments, was slightly startled. He stopped the task at hand and sneered. As a close neighbor of Konoha, the Sand-Hidden Village was naturally very afraid of the powerful Fire Country. Maybe one day Konoha would be unhappy and take it out on them. Although this was just a simple assumption, it also showed the Sand-Hidden Village's uneasiness. So you mean to reject them? Kabuto asked cautiously, especially when he saw the distorted human bodies on the test bench. He couldn't help but have goosebumps all over his body. Even if he had seen this scene countless times, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Orochimaru was a temperamental and unscrupulous person. Maybe one day he would be the one lying there. Orochimaru just glanced at Kabuto's unnatural expression and said disdainfully, "The fourth Kazekage overestimated the power of the Sand-Hidden Village, and underestimated the strength of Otogekure. Without obtaining the corpses of the previous Hokage, Orochimaru did intend to form an alliance with the Sand Village. but now that he has obtained the corpses of the 3 Hokages, he can use the Edo Tensei to resurrect them, so forming an alliance with the Sand Village is meaningless. Refuse. Orochimaru glanced at Kabuto and said cruelly, "Why should I refuse? Isn't this a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to kill the 4th Kazekage? At that time I will replace the 4th Kazekage and mix into Konoha. Sarutobi-sensei will die in my hands. Don't you think it's a blessing? Masters should feel gratified to see their disciples surpass themselves." Orochimaru's pale face was full of killing intent, and he said with an extremely cold smile. His hoarse voice was very harsh. Not to mention being stared at by Orochimaru, just hearing his incomparably cold voice gave people an indescribable sense of oppression, which made people have a mental breakdown. Orochimaru-sama is right. Yakushi nodded. After obtaining the corpses of the previous Hokage, the Sand Village's alliance wasn't that important anymore. Killing the 4th Kazekage wasn't a difficult task. He could wait until the Chunin exam to ambush him. Moreover, Orochimaru can borrow the power of the Sand Hidden Village, including the tailed beasts of the Sand Hidden Village. With all these reasons combined, it's better for the Kazekage to die. Orochimaru-sama. At this moment, Orochimaru's voice sounded. He looked up and saw the pale-faced boy kneeling on the ground and bowing his head respectfully. This boy was Kimimaro, one of Orochimaru's confidants. "You came at the right time." Seeing Kimimaro's arrival, Orochimaru smiled and looked at Kimimaro with satisfaction. His snake eyes flashed with pity. The power of Shikatsumiyaku was known to the world. Kimimaro should have been the most suitable vessel for reincarnation, but he was suffering from an incurable disease. "What do you think of my plan?" Orochimaru looked at Kimimaro expectantly and asked with interest. Kimimaro wasn't only strong, but his thinking ability was also good. Kimimaro's eyes flashed with hesitation, and after thinking for a while he frowned and said, "The plan can't keep up with the changes, the faster the better. I suggest that we immediately use the negotiation as an excuse to lure the 4th Kazekage out of the Sand Hidden Village, and then join forces to kill him." "It makes sense." Orochimaru nodded when he heard this. If he waited until the day of the Chunin exam, it might be too late. Only by killing the Kazekage now can he use his identity as a Kazekage to maximize his value. 2 days later I will send someone to lure the 4th Kazekage out of the Sand Hidden Village and we will besiege him. Looking at Kimimaro's appreciative eyes, Orochimaru said with a gloomy voice. The murderous intent in his snake eyes was particularly obvious. He didn't dare to say that he would fight with Kimimaro alone. After all, he was a Kage. In the rain-hidden village, in a dark room with dirty lights, Dustless was leisurely lying on the soft sofa. Frankly speaking, ever since he entered Akatsuki these past few years, he had never been leisurely. He was busy all day long with the so-called mission. This was the so-called working to earn extra money. Of course, Kakuzu, who loved money as much as his life, was more than happy to do this. He was the most hard-working one. Dustless-sama, Orochimaru has sent his men to contact the Kazekage, but he doesn't seem to intend to form an alliance with the Kazekage. Instead, he secretly took a few confidants to ambush the Kazekage in advance. It seems that he wants to attack the Kazekage. White Zetsu stared at Dustless, who was lying on the sofa, and seriously reported the situation of Orochimaru. He didn't dare to hide anything. Dustless just nodded silently and frowned. He didn't expect Orochimaru to kill the Kazekage at this time. Fine, let him be. He's helping me by doing this. With a smile on his face, Dustless was no longer entangled. His eyes flashed with a dazzling light. The Sandaime knew too many secrets. Uchiha Itachi's condition for joining the Akatsuki was that he wasn't allowed to attack Konoha. Now, using Orochimaru's hand to kill the 3rd Hokage is the most appropriate. Chapter 198. Orochimaru's plan was being carried out like a hot tea. This old guy really had the nature of an ambitious person. He took one step at a time. He evolved the plan until it was watertight, then he decided to implement it. It was normal for him to be so cautious. After all, the 4th Tsuchikage of the Sand Village was also a Kage-level powerhouse. After a series of intense preparations, Orochimaru finally decided to kill the Yondaime-sama Kazekage, and replace him during the Chunin exam. Land of wind, sand hidden village. Endless wind and sand covered the sky and covered the earth. Boundless hurricanes whistled and the ground was a dry desert. There was no sign of life. It's no wonder that the sand-hidden village would attack Konoha. Compared to Konoha's ninja village with superior geographical location, convenient transportation, warm climate and fertile land, the sand-hidden village's territory is simply a stone in a latrine pit. In the cool valley, two groups of people could be clearly seen gathering, and their clothes were obviously different. Obviously they belonged to two different forces. One of them was naturally the sand-hidden village, and the other was naturally Orochimaru's Otogekure. It seems that they are all here. Gazing at the flow of people in the valley below, two lonely figures could be clearly seen standing outside. They were wearing black windbreakers embroidered with red clouds and bamboo hats with bells tied to them. Occasionally when a breeze blew past, there would be a clear and melodious sound. The two figures stood above the valley. One of them was a handsome young man who looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. The other person's appearance was really unflattering. He had nepenthes on his shoulders and he was also a black and white yin-yang. It was Dustless and Zetsu. Now Dustless is 26 years old, but his appearance is around 17 or 18 years old. As for the specific reason only God knows. During this period, Otsutsuki Hagoromo also asked Dustless the reason, but Dustless really didn't know. According to his estimation, it should be that after one's strength reaches a certain level, even if they can't reach the exaggerated level of immortality, it shouldn't be a problem to maintain their appearance. Yondaime Kazekage is unusually calm. He dared to meet Orochimaru so easily. I don't know if he believes in his own strength, or if he's sure that Orochimaru won't harm him. White Zetsu's surprised voice sounded, and then he looked at the Kazekage frivolously. The contempt in his eyes was even more obvious, especially when he saw the Kazekage's entourage shaking their heads. Orochimaru is an S-class ninja, how can he be a kind person? Black Zetsu was also speechless. Yondaime Kazekage has a lot of followers, most of them are chunin, there are too few jonin, and although Orochimaru's side only has a few subordinates, without exception all of them are strong, all of them were once reincarnated bodies that Orochimaru spent a lot of effort to plunder. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Dustless curled his lips and looked at Yondaime Kazekage sarcastically. This guy is definitely not a good person. Dustless felt that it was a pity that he didn't kill this guy during the Third World War. Dustless's eyes moved slightly, and he saw Orochimaru's subordinates in the valley below, and his eyes flashed with appreciation. Orochimaru's subordinates are good. All of them have Kekkei Genkai, and they belong to the rare and extremely powerful kind. Dustless nodded and his eyes stayed on Kimimaro and the others, but Black Zetsu looked at Kimimaro with interest, as if he had discovered a prehistoric creature, and his face was full of curiosity. Orochimaru, we can talk about cooperation in detail a few days before the attack on Konoha. It's a bit early to talk about this now. Yondaime Kazekage stared at Orochimaru's snake eyes and frowned slightly. There was still some time before the Chunin exam and it was indeed early to talk about this. Kazuma, there are some things that need to be said in advance. Orochimaru's pale face raised a smile, and there was a beast-like gaze hidden in the depths of his snake eyes. Yondaime Kazekage frowned slightly and looked at Orochimaru's subordinates behind him, and he nodded and chuckled. As expected of one of the Sannin, Orochimaru, your subordinates are all phoenixes. After saying that, Yondaime Kazekage walked towards Orochimaru, and his demeanor was quite amiable, giving a feeling of a spring breeze, as if they were brothers who hadn't seen each other for many years. They're indeed very good. Orochimaru nodded and accepted all the praise of Yondaime Kazekage, because this is an undeniable fact. His subordinates are all top-notch experts, and they can't even enter his eyes, and they aren't even qualified to be experimental subjects. Seeing Yondaime Kazekage striding towards him, Orochimaru's mouth curled into a cold smile. They are naturally very good. If they weren't good, how would I dare to ambush and kill Kazekage? Wouch! After saying that, Orochimaru's body shuttled like lightning, crossing layers of space, and almost instantly appeared in front of Yondaime Kazekage, and under Yondaime Kazekage's horrified gaze, Orochimaru waved his sword of Kusanagi, and the cold light directly swept towards Yondaime Kazekage. Puchi! Yondaime Kazekage's abdomen was clearly visible, and although he avoided Orochimaru's attack, he was still injured. Enduring the pain in his abdomen, Yondaime Kazekage retreated for a distance. Kazakagama. Seeing that the Kazakage was injured by Orochimaru, the sand shinobi who came with Orochimaru hurriedly rushed over and looked at the wound on the Kazakage's abdomen worriedly. At the same time, they didn't forget to glare at Orochimaru with anger. "You're still alive, worthy of being the Kage of the village." Orochimaru nodded slightly, and a cold smile appeared on his face as he said coldly, "Now I will send you to hell." With Orochimaru's order, the ninjas behind him suddenly rushed out, like wolves in a flock of sheep, killing the sand ninjas. The situation was almost in a state of destruction. Chapter 199. Orochimaru smiled as he looked at Kazakage, who was covered in cold sweat. His expression became even colder and indifferent, and his eyes were as sharp as a knife without any emotion. "What do you want, Orochimaru? Do you think you can have peace after offending the sand and Otoge-cure?" Suppressing the stinging pain in his chest, the Kazakage glared at Orochimaru. His eyes flashed with a sinister light, like a dying beast. His eyes were filled with hysterical madness. It's not difficult to see that if he wasn't limited by his injuries, the Kazakage would definitely fight Orochimaru to the death. "Haven't you figured out the situation yet? No wonder the sand village is in a mess in your hands." Kimimaro stepped forward indifferently and his tone was emotionless. He looked at the pale Kazakage indifferently. His emotionless eyes were no different from looking at a dead man. "Bastard, how dare you boast so shamelessly? Didn't Orochimaru, that old bastard, teach you how to respect your elders? Get out of my way." Seeing Kimimaro ridiculing him, the Kazakage's face immediately turned pale, and he shouted at Kimimaro with a gloomy voice. At the same time he released his murderous aura, trying to crush Kimimaro's will. "The more you live, the more you're regressing. You're actually fighting against a kid," and Orochimaru sneered at the struggling Kazakage, and then looked at Kimimaro, who was bathed in Kazakage's murderous aura, and patted him on the shoulder with a hopeless look. "You want to defeat this child with murderous aura? You're too naive." Shaking his head, Orochimaru's contempt became more obvious as he mocked. "Kazakage, your idea is too ridiculous. It's a pity that the heavens are jealous of such a talent. Otherwise, this kid's future potential will definitely surpass you and me. So what, Orochimaru? I will kill you." With a cold snort, the Kazakage stood up shakily, and his body was like a willow branch dancing in the wind. Not to mention killing Orochimaru, it would be a miracle if he could stand up. Even so, due to the strong hatred in his heart, he stood up and vowed to kill Orochimaru. "Then you'll have to step over my dead body." Kimimaro's eyes were filled with endless cold light as he said firmly. At the same time he stood in front of Orochimaru. Countless sharp bones drilled out of his body, not to mention killing him. It was extremely difficult to get close to him. No one could treat the bones that were as hard as steel and as fast as blades as air. Staring at the Kazakage, Kimimaro's eyes were filled with coldness. Orochimaru was the greatest meaning of his existence, and the person in front of him wanted to kill the god in his heart. 10 finger-piercing bullets. He threw his hands forward with all his strength and small bones shot out from the front of his fingers, whistling out like bullets. The appearance looked ordinary and fragile, but it made the Kazakage frown slightly. He felt that Kimimaro's Kekkei Genkai was extraordinary, and he quickly made a defense. Immediately he controlled the thick sand to gather in front of him, forming an indestructible circular sand shield, firmly blocking the destruction of the chi ray. Bang bang bang. The finger bone whistled through the air and landed on the shield, causing sand and dust to splatter everywhere. It left a deep imprint on the shield, but it was unable to penetrate the sturdy and solid defense. "Is this guy from the Kagaya clan?" Looking gloomily at Kimimaro, who was covered in barbs like a hedgehog, Yondaime was surprised. The story of Kagaya clan's large-scale attack on the Mist Village was known all over the world. The sad thing was that the Kagaya clan was strong enough, but the Mist was stronger. In the end, the Kagaya clan was killed by the Mist and the Kagaya clan was annihilated. This person who could use the corpse bone pulse was obviously a fish that escaped the net. "Yes, this child is the Kagaya clan's orphan." Orochimaru nodded and admitted. There was no need to hide it, especially with this person who was about to die. The Kagaya clan was a fighting clan and the whole clan was like a wild beast. They were crazy and they attacked the Mist Village without fear of death. So what, a mere Kagaya clan can't make a big wave. Holding back the boiling anger in his heart, Raza's chakra began to rage as he stared at Orochimaru behind Kimimaro, and his killing intent broke out uncontrollably. Magnet release, golden sand burial. Countless sand on the ground seemed to be driven by magic as it wrapped around Raza, Orochimaru and Kimimaro. The momentum was monstrous, almost covering the entire sky. Boundless sand surged over like a flowing river, endless and unending. Moreover, the thickness of this sand was obviously not ordinary. Countless metals were shining within it. Worthy of being the Kage of the village, he's still so brave even when injured. Dustless and Zetsu were watching the battle from the top of the canyon. Seeing the Kazekage use a large-scale magnet release, Zetsu was amazed. He seemed to be surprised by the Kazekage's vitality. That's his full blow and it can be regarded as a dying light. At that time, Orochimaru won't even need to do anything. Maybe if you don't try so hard, you might still be able to run to the sand-hidden village to inform them. You're just an ignorant fool. Looking at the Kazekage fighting in the canyon below, Zetsu's voice was extremely hoarse. It wasn't difficult to hear his disdain for the Kazekage's approach. The outcome is decided, let's go, Zetsu. After watching the battle for a while, Dustless chose to leave. His whole body was covered in a golden luster as he disappeared into the sky. As Zetsu said before, the fall of the Kazekage was an unsolvable situation. Since the goal was achieved, there was no need to waste time and effort here. Seeing Dustless disappear, Zetsu also went deep into the ground and the sky was calm again. Only the bloody massacre was still going on in the valley. Chapter 200. Time flies. It's been 3 days since Orochimaru assassinated the Kazekage. Things have developed according to Orochimaru's plan. He temporarily replaced the 4th Tsuchikage and lurked in the sand-hidden village. With the help of the sand-hidden village, he perfected his Konoha collapse plan. At the same time, he mobilized the sand-hidden village's elite ninjas to attack Konoha. Orochimaru's plan was in full swing and soon it took shape. On the other side, Team 7, who were carrying out the mission in the Land of Wave, finally completed the mission and were on their way back to Konoha. After this battle, Team 7 finally became a little bit better. At least Kakashi thought so. Whether it was Uzumaki Naruto or Uchiha Sasuke, they obviously matured a lot after this mission. The night sky was particularly peaceful, and several figures could be clearly seen around the campfire. Looking closely, it was Team 7 led by Kakashi. However, because it will take a lot of time to return to Konoha, and there was no hotel around, the 4 of them had no choice but to sleep in the wild. Fortunately, everyone was a ninja. It was inevitable that unexpected things would happen during the mission, so they all brought tents and compressed biscuits with them. However, as the saying goes, there are exceptions to everything. Kakashi-sensei once said that we are in the same team. We should help each other and pay attention to teamwork. So hurry up and give me some of your food. Lord Naruto's stomach is already growling and he needs your help. The kid with golden hair and a few whiskers on his face looked expectantly at the black-haired boy in front of him, but he was miserably ignored. He immediately shouted angrily, "Sasuke, I'm talking about you." There was no doubt that the blonde boy was Uzumaki Naruto, and the black-haired boy was Uchiha Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke just looked at the indignant Uzumaki Naruto with disdain, then looked at Uzumaki Naruto's belly and sneered contemptuously, "Often a ninja's duel depends on strength, but you really need to rely on your belly to fight. Naruto, you are indeed the #1 ninja in the school." "What did you say?" Uzumaki Naruto was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. He stood up and stared at Uchiha Sasuke with his dark blue pupils. Staring at his unmoved face, Naruto felt particularly annoyed and he couldn't wait to kick him. Naruto, Sasuke is right. Accidents often happen when ninjas perform tasks. You must be prepared in advance. Kakashi took out a bag of food from his backpack and handed it to Uzumaki Naruto and said earnestly, "The world of ninja is very cruel. There is no morality. You have to be prepared for a rainy day." I understand, Kakashi-sensei. Uzumaki Naruto picked up the food and ate it directly, ignoring Kakashi's words. He didn't even look at him. Obviously, he didn't listen to him. "Brat, you don't understand human language." Kakashi smiled bitterly when he saw this. He knew that Uzumaki Naruto treated his words as a fart. He shook his head and was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. After all, some things need to be done by himself. He just continued to eat compressed food to replenish the physical strength consumed during the day. The atmosphere quickly fell into silence, and only the sound of food being eaten could be heard. Uchiha Sasuke was extremely fast and neat no matter what he did. After quickly eating dinner, he ran to the distant pool. A training madman like him would train himself whenever he had a chance. Needless to say, he knew what he was doing. Sasuke. Haruno Sakura put down the lunchbox and looked at Sasuke's back. Her eyes were full of complicated emotions. Her painstakingly conceived communication plan was ruined. What a desperate little brat. Kakashi couldn't help but frown when he saw this. Everything should be paid attention to, the combination of work and rest, and the dangerous profession of ninja is no exception. It's good to strengthen the training, but if Uchiha Sasuke works so hard, he may go crazy and fall into evil ways. Orochimaru betrayed Konoha because he pursued the limit of ninjutsu too much. In a trance, Kakashi also saw such a shadow in Uchiha Sasuke. Sakura, look after Naruto. I'll go and see. Standing up, Kakashi told Sakura. Naruto's IQ is really not to be complimented. He always does something unexpected. Haruno Sakura nodded obediently, indicating that she understood, and immediately watched Kakashi leave. Fire release. Great fireball technique. A blazing and huge fireball rose from the pitch-black water surface, heating up the water in the pond. White steam rose from it and it seemed to be quite powerful. Damn, it's still too weak. I'm afraid I can't defeat that man in my life. Uchiha Sasuke's eyes were full of dissatisfaction. His young fists were clenched tightly with a lot of sweat. The unwillingness on his small face was obvious. The red light in his eyes was surging, ferocious and scary. The man in his mouth was naturally Uchiha Itachi. His murderous aura broke out uncontrollably. You've done a good job, Sasuke. Your dead parents will be able to rest in peace after seeing your hard work and the results you have now. Kakashi's voice came from behind. Uchiha Sasuke just turned his head, showing a cold face. Compared to that man, I'm still too far away. For him, I'm not even an ant. Don't worry, Sasuke. You can definitely surpass Uchiha Itachi in the future. Seeing Uchiha Sasuke so obsessed with hatred, Kakashi could only persuade him in another way, trying to reduce Uchiha Sasuke's obsession with Uchiha Itachi. Hearing this, Uchiha Sasuke calmed down, and the chakra flow on his body disappeared. With a little smile on his mouth, his small face was particularly strange under the moonlight. Uchiha Itachi, I didn't target that man a long time ago. He's just an insignificant person who will be killed by me in the future. My target is the existence that even Uchiha Itachi can only look up to, Uchiha Dustless. Chapter 201. Under the reflection of the clear pool water, Uchiha Sasuke's ferocious little face was particularly horrifying. His face overflowed with cold air, and his whole body floated with a frightening red light, like a ghost in hell, the root of evil. Even Kakashi's heart trembled fiercely. Sasuke, who told you about that man? Kakashi asked in a deep voice. Obviously he was surprised that Sasuke knew about Uchiha Dustless, and it seemed that he knew a lot about him. There's no need to be so nervous. One day in the future I will definitely stand on the head of Uchiha Dustless, and revive the Uchiha family. His eyes were shining. Uchiha Sasuke's voice was sonorous and powerful, and his voice was very loud, full of confidence. Compared to the former Uchiha Sasuke who gave people a feeling of simple and conceited, at this moment he was reborn like a dazzling star in the dark night, like a peerless talent. Of course, all of this was ridiculous in Kakashi's eyes. Even though he was very optimistic about Uchiha Sasuke at this moment, he couldn't help but be shocked by his absurd idea. There is a limit to dreaming and fantasizing. Everything must be based on evidence. If it's out of line, then it's a complete idiot. At this moment, in Kakashi's eyes, Uchiha Sasuke had the attribute of an idiot. Who is Uchiha Dustless? He's almost deified by the world, the strongest ninja standing at the top of the pyramid. Especially when the old man Inoki revealed that he joined the Akatsuki, Uchiha Dustless's prestige reached the peak, even higher than Uchiha Madara and Hashirama Senju. The reason is that Uchiha Madara and Hashirama are dead, but Uchiha Dustless is still alive. Sasuke, I advise you not to think about those useless and unrealistic dreams. Do the things in front of you well and become stronger with peace of mind. Don't think about reaching the sky in one step. Kakashi coldly looked at Uchiha Sasuke, who was immersed in his dream, and said with a warning tone, I can tell you for sure that Uchiha Dustless, your big brother, is completely dead. Gazing at Uchiha Sasuke's yearning look, Kakashi vowed. Out of helplessness he could only deceive Uchiha Sasuke. He didn't want Uchiha Sasuke to live in the shadow of Spotless, just like him. Almost all the geniuses of the same generation as Dustless lived in his shadow. Dead. Uchiha Sasuke froze, looked at Kakashi in disbelief, and then mocked. Kakashi, you don't think I'm a 3-year-old child, do you? Do you think I'll believe this kind of thing just based on your one-sided words? This is what that damned man told me himself. At the mention of that damn man, Sasuke's little face twisted, as terrible as a devil with an aura of isolation. Sure enough, it's Itachi. Hearing this, Kakashi's eyes flashed with understanding. The news that Dustless is not dead is only in the ears of the major ninja villages. Uchiha Sasuke can know so much about Dustless's deeds. Obviously his brother Uchiha Itachi, who joined the Akatsuki, told him. At the same time, Kakashi also felt very troubled. He could see the madness in Uchiha Sasuke's eyes. If he doesn't contain the crazy and restless thoughts in his heart, maybe he will really do something crazy in the future. Sasuke, you will train with me in the future and I will guide you. After that, I will be your sensei. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Kakashi decided to put Uchiha Sasuke, an uncertain factor, by his side. He could feel the unprecedented haze and hatred in Uchiha Sasuke's heart. If he doesn't stop in time, he will either be strangled or fall off the cliff to his death. Sensei? Uchiha Sasuke was stunned at first, looked at Kakashi in surprise and said, Forget it, although you are a defective product, you are barely capable of being my sensei. Of course this sensei has a time limit. Kakashi's mouth twitched fiercely and he was unusually speechless. Compared with the usually low-key and gentle Uchiha Itachi, Uchiha Sasuke's style and character are absolutely opposite. Forget it as you like. No longer entangled in this issue, Kakashi smiled bitterly. He just wanted Sasuke to stay by his side and observe secretly, in case this kid is tempted by others to do something unforgivable. What a crazy kid. I don't know if he will be so lawless after knowing the true strength of Dustless Sama. Zetsu, who was secretly paying attention to Team 7, sneered. To be honest, when Uchiha Sasuke said those words, not only Kakashi was shocked, but he and Black Zetsu were also shocked. He couldn't help but sweat for Uchiha Sasuke's ignorance. There is a limit to ignorance and stupidity. Obviously, Uchiha Sasuke didn't realize what Dustless represented. To what extent his strength reached, only God knows. Even if he said that he surpassed Uchiha Madara, no one would doubt it. Isn't this interesting? I'm afraid that Dustless Sama also thinks so. He can't wait for his third brother to bring him some fun to relieve his current boring life. Black Zetsu looked at Uchiha Sasuke indifferently. In the past thousands of years he had provoked several reincarnations of Asura and Indra. Naturally, he knew Uchiha Sasuke's potential better than others. Perhaps now he is not as good as Uchiha Itachi. As long as Uchiha Itachi wants to, he can kill him in an instant. But as Indra's reincarnation, Uchiha Sasuke is destined to live a mediocre life. This is not his choice, but it was destined when he was born. Yes, as Dustless Sama's younger brother, this kid should also be trash. White Zetsu nodded thoughtfully. Uchiha Itachi is also Dustless's younger brother. His strength is obvious to all. There is no reason for Uchiha Sasuke to be trash. Chapter 202. This is interesting, writing on my head to show off. That kid's ambition is quite big and he has such a big ambition, but I really hope he has this determination and will. Dustless lazily listened to Zetsu's report, and it seemed that he heard the most interesting topic. The corner of his mouth raised a faint arc and he said to himself with emotion. However, that high smile was no different from a fox's. If possible, Dustless really hoped that Uchiha Sasuke could grow up and have a good fight with Uchiha Itachi. The two of you are surprisingly close. An indifferent and quiet voice suddenly sounded, and a faint ripple appeared in the dark space, as if it was full of magic that didn't dissipate for a long time. The slender body outline and the traces of the vicissitudes of life on the indifferent face could be vaguely seen. Wearing the same Akatsuki uniform as Dustless, it was not difficult to see that it was Uchiha Itachi. When did this guy? White Zetsu was surprised to see Uchiha Itachi coming out of the darkness. His face was gloomy and cautious. Just now he didn't realize that someone was approaching him. He immediately saw Dustless with a smile on the corner of his mouth. He was relieved. I'm afraid that Dustless already realized that Uchiha Itachi was coming. Good hiding, his strength can't be underestimated. Black Zetsu also said in a deep voice. I'm afraid that Uchiha Itachi's strength has reached an incredible level. I'm afraid that even the leader of Akatsuki, Pain, can't win against him. I've been waiting for a long time and you finally came, Itachi. Looking at Uchiha Itachi with a smile, Dustless's smile became more obvious. In fact, he was already aware when Uchiha Itachi came. As a member of Akatsuki, it should be normal for us to communicate with each other. Turning his head and looking at Dustless, Uchiha Itachi's eyes suddenly flashed with light, and a rare human-like fluctuation appeared in his eyes. Why did you join Akatsuki? There should be something worth your attention here. As for tailed beasts, even if you don't need them, you can still catch them. Itachi looked at Dustless with torch-like eyes. His cold eyes seemed to be able to penetrate everything. However, Dustless's body was shrouded in endless gloomy luster, like a black hole in the depths of the vast universe. Not only could he not see through it, but he also exuded a majestic suction force, which made Itachi lost his mind and unable to extricate himself from it. Skunk. A plain voice sounded like ripples spreading in the water, pulling the absent-minded Itachi back to reality. He suddenly looked up and saw Dustless looking at him indifferently. Itachi's heart was slightly sluggish. Perhaps at that moment, if Dustless had made a sneak attack on him, he would have succeeded. To some extent, I joined Akatsuki for the same purpose, but there are essential differences. If I remember correctly, after joining Akatsuki for so many years, this is the first time we've met alone. Unfortunately, his eyes fell on Itachi. Dustless said, it's a pity that the kid is missing. Sasuke is a genius, not worse than you. Compared to you and me who have been through a lot, he's much happier. After that, Dustless looked at Itachi with a smile. Although Itachi hid it well, Dustless could still see his inner vibration and unnaturalness. Itachi, what do you think of the so-called brother? Suddenly closing his eyes, Dustless lay comfortably on the soft sofa, spread his arms and asked in an unusually lazy tone with a little expectation. Hearing this, Itachi just kept silent. He was sure what Dustless was going to say next. You must already know the stone tablet under the Naka shrine of the Uchiha clan. There is a stone tablet left by Hagoromo Sannin, which records the steps to open the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Glancing at Itachi, seeing that he was unmoved, Dustless continued. As long as you transplant the Mangekyo Sharingan of your relatives, you can open the legendary eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. From then on, your dojutsu will not be limited. Even if you use it without limit, it will not be sealed. In other words, the Uchiha clan is a clan abandoned and cursed by God. Normal human feelings are too extravagant for us who bear the Uchiha name. The so-called brothers are just parts of each other, that's all. Hagoromo Sannin? Stupid thing, that stone tablet has already been modified by me. The whole world is my chess piece. The story of your ninja is just a script written by me, including you, Dustless Uchiha. Heiju looked at Wu Chen with sarcasm in his heart. Then he closed his eyes calmly and his mind wandered. He couldn't help but imagine Wu Chen's ever-changing expression after the truth was revealed. I'm standing here, if you have the ability, come and get it. Itachi's deep, dark eyes fell on Dustless. Uchiha Itachi was blunt, calm and emotionless like a sculpture. He already knew what Dustless meant. But I'm Yorin Sasuke's big brother, how could I do such a heartless and heartless thing? Dustless said very seriously. Not to mention the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, even the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan couldn't arouse his interest. The only thing that he cared about now was the ownership of the Jubi. Nothing else mattered to him. If you have something to say, just say it. Itachi looked at Dustless faintly. Seeing the latter's serious face and clear pupils, he couldn't help but frown secretly. He also knew the way to open the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Transplanting a relative's Mangekyo Sharingan can give birth to the legendary eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. There was no other way. Dustless's dojutsu was unusually strong, and it also reflected the darkness in his heart. In other words, the stronger the dojutsu, the darker their ambitions will be and they will fall into evil ways. In Itachi's view, Dustless was a person who pursued power, and there was no reason for him not to be tempted by the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Chapter 203. Itachi's heart was extremely complicated, but he was also relieved. If Dustless took the opportunity to attack, he really didn't have the confidence to resist. Even if this was inside the Akatsuki, as long as there was a dispute, other members would immediately come to support. However, according to Itachi's estimation, he was afraid that all members would face Dustless together. His eyes fell on Zetsu quietly and Dustless's eyes lit up, indicating him to leave. Looking at Dustless suspiciously, Zetsu nodded, and then his body began to sink into the depths of the ground and disappeared. In the empty darkness, only Dustless and Itachi were left. That guy really listened to you. Seeing Zetsu leave, Itachi frowned slightly. Zetsu was naturally a member of the Akatsuki. Everyone was equal and there was no hierarchy. However, when it came to Dustless, it obviously became a subtle superior-subordinate relationship. Dustless smiled and said softly, "Maybe you don't know, but there is actually a level above the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan." With a faint light in his eyes, Dustless whispered, "It's the Rinnegan above the three Dojutsu Pain's eyes." Without the slightest reservation, Dustless told Itachi the origin of Rinnegan, with a sly sneer on the corner of his mouth. Impossible. Itachi directly denied Dustless's idea without thinking. Maybe the evolution of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is indeed the Rinnegan, but Uzumaki Nagato didn't have the Uchiha's blood. Everyone will rely on their own knowledge and understanding to live and be bound by these things. This is the so-called reality. Dustless casually glanced at Itachi and explained faintly with a rare melancholy tone. In other words, everyone actually lives in their own fantasy world. For example, you, Itachi. Before seeing me, the whole world thought I was dead. This is your fantasy. Hearing this, Itachi frowned and asked, "What are you trying to say? Don't you understand? Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan is the limit of the Sharingan. This is just your simple one-sided understanding." Dustless stood up and stretched his body slightly. Immediately, the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his body. Through the window, he looked at the hazy horizon in the distance. In fact, you've been living in the fantasy world of the world. Things are not as simple as you think. Perhaps if you look at the same thing in a different way and jump away from your preconceived notions, the doubts in your heart will be cleared up. Dustless looked at the void in front of him indifferently. That's the truth. Uchiha Itachi tried to build a perfect world for Uchiha Sasuke, but it was impossible. Itachi was silent, but there was a faint light of approval in the depths of his eyes. Indeed, as Dustless said, he has always been looking at the world with his own wisdom and cognition. He was bound by his own thoughts, so he couldn't completely see the essence of the world. His big brother, who he thought was dead, suddenly resurrected, and the masked man, Uchiha Madara, who he thought was dead, was the same. Itachi quickly realized the problem. Uzumaki didn't have Uchiha blood, and Nagato's Rinnegan was probably transplanted from someone else. As expected of Itachi, you're really quick-witted. You found the problem so quickly. As you imagined, Uzumaki Nagato, who didn't have the Uchiha's bloodline and didn't have the Sharingan, was indeed a marionette. And the man who gave him the Rinnegan was the masked man who helped you. Dustless didn't hide anything. Itachi knew this because the first person who contacted Itachi was the masked man. As for the identity of the masked man, I don't think I need to say it. You should know who he is, and it coincides with your imagination. That man is Uchiha Madara. Time passed, and in a blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Konoha was bustling with people and a large number of ninjas could be seen. However, a large number of them were teenagers and they were dressed differently. Obviously, they came from different countries. The reason why they came to Konoha was to participate in the Chunin exam. Team 7, led by Kakashi, passed the first exam without any mishap. Even if Uzumaki Naruto taught them a blank paper, they still managed to pass. Today they were about to face the second survival trial. Ninjas from all over the world gathered here, looking at the beautiful female ninja in front of them. Their faces were cautious and they didn't dare to show the slightest arrogance. Looking sideways, it was two unlucky children who were foaming at the mouth. Because they just offended the female ninja of Konoha, they were beaten to vomit and have diarrhea. The person who beat them was a ninja named Mitarashi Anko. This little girl is really fierce. Uzumaki Naruto wiped the sweat stains and couldn't help but feel a chill. Obviously, Mitarashi Anko's fierce style made his heart palpitate. Little girl, is that what you should call me? Beside him, Haruno Sakura rolled her eyes and looked at Uzumaki Naruto dumbfounded. That woman really knows how to find work for others. In the bushes, a dark shadow was looming. His body was embroidered with a dazzling red cloud. Staring at the dense crowd below, Wuxia frowned without a trace. Forget it, let's take that girl away. Dustless, who planned to leave, sighed, thinking of Otsutsuki Haguro's task and smiled bitterly. Not to mention this is just a convenient task. Staring at the cowardly girl in the crowd, Dustless's eyes flashed with a cold light, and then his body disappeared into the sky like a ghost. Hearing that Dustless was going to Konoha to spy on the situation, Haguro immediately issued a bitter task for Dustless, and there was no reward. The content was to catch someone with the Byakugan bloodline. Chapter 204. In the scorching summer, the merciless sun roasted the earth. The ninjas who were about to participate in the second exam came from many ninja villages, and they also secretly observed each other. Soon these people would be enemies. The young ninjas secretly observed each other, and soon a little devil with red hair and eye circles came into their line of sight. Damn, what's wrong with this red-haired guy? How can he have such a crazy murderous aura? How many evil things did that bastard with eye circles do? Many ninjas from the ninja villages changed their faces and stared cautiously at the little boy with his hands in front of him and a sand-like gourd behind him. They felt the coldness of the dead on his body, and their bodies trembled involuntarily. The little boy had a dark red love character on his forehead, and his body was surrounded by an aura of isolation. His emotionless pupils were like a bloodthirsty beast, filled with palpitating power. The girl and the boy dressed in black beside him were obviously not simple and no one dared to look at them. The red-haired boy with murderous aura was naturally Gaara. The girl with a beautiful figure was naturally his sister Temari, and the other was his brother Kankuro. That little tanuki cat is still in his body. I was worried that he was dead before, but it turned out to be a waste of emotions. Looking at Gaara or simply the Ichibi in his stomach, Dustless was angry. He didn't spend any effort to find the Ichibi back then. The vitality of the bijou is really huge. He didn't die even after being hit by such a trick. His pupils narrowed slightly, Dustless's eyes locked on Gaara, and his threatening gaze seemed to penetrate Gaara's body and directly see the Ichibi Shikaku sealed in his body. The combination of Kinsusanu and glinting fruit didn't kill him. Dustless was really surprised, but he also deliberately let Shikaku go. Otherwise, Shikaku's life would have been taken by him. It seemed that Gaara felt that someone was spying on him and he subconsciously looked over. The scene in his eyes was empty and the empty environment was panoramic. Looks like it's just my imagination. Retracting his gaze again, Gaara just stood there indifferently, quietly waiting for the upcoming killing feast. He seemed to see the tragic scene of blood dancing all over the sky, and his face turned ferocious uncontrollably. This kid's intuition is quite sharp, Dustless said faintly. He raised his eyes and looked at the girl in the distance. Hesitation flashed in his heart. If he took Hinata away like this, it would cause a lot of trouble. Or to create an illusion of her death. Staring at the murderous Gaara, Dustless's mouth curled into a mocking smile. Even if Hyuga Hinata was killed by such a murderous demon, not many people would doubt it. That old bastard Orochimaru actually played with these little brats and even disguised himself as a woman. Looking at the young woman from Kusagakure, Dustless's mouth flashed with a touch of sarcasm, and he couldn't help but sweat for Orochimaru's madness. Let's not talk about the shortcomings of Orochimaru's so-called living corpse reincarnation technique for the time being. The only thing that made Dust blush with shame was that Orochimaru had once reincarnated into a woman's body. Although his soul would not change, his physiology had become a woman. He's quite open-minded. Orochimaru has obviously abandoned the concept of humanity. It doesn't matter to him whether he's a man or a woman. For him, eternal and indestructible survival is above everything. Even if he has to give up everything, he doesn't care. Time slowly passed by and the second exam soon began. A large number of young ninjas poured into the forest of death ahead. There were 13 heaven scrolls and 13 earth scrolls, and they were randomly distributed to 26 groups. Each group had to get a pair of heaven and earth scrolls and reach the destination within 5 days to pass the exam. Otherwise it's a failure. It seems that it's starting. Looking at the little brats who poured into the forest one after another, Dustless's eyes flashed with hesitation. After hesitating for a while, he resolutely chose to follow. It's not that he was bored to play with these little brats, but there's a saying that plans can't keep up with changes. Although he was sure that Hyuga Hinata wouldn't die, Dustless still followed them to prevent accidents. After so many years, her heart of reviving the Otsutsuki clan is still alive. Sighing silently, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Otsutsuki Higuro's stomach hasn't moved yet. He probably wants to turn Hyuga Hinata, who has Byakugan, into a member of the Otsutsuki clan. After all, the bloodline of the two clans is the same. However, Dustless didn't choose to follow Hyuga Hinata and others, but chose to follow the figures in front of him. His eyes swept over the 3 figures in front of him. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke. You 3 are really a perfect match. Nodding without a trace, Dustless suddenly felt that these 3 groups were an unusual match at this time. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke, who is good at disguising. To some extent they are a perfect match, a collection of strange people in various fields. Time passed quickly and there were only 5 days left. Once it's over, it means that everything is over and all members of Team 7 will lose the qualification to be promoted to Chunin this time. Therefore, although Sasuke and Naruto usually have some disagreements, the two still chose to join forces at such a critical juncture. However, perhaps the reason why Team 7 is always so tragic, it didn't take long for them to meet their biggest enemy, Orochimaru, who pretended to be a ninja of Kusagakure. The reason why Orochimaru spent so much effort was nothing more than that after learning about Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Itachi's Sharingan, the fire in his heart didn't reduce, but burned even more. He chose to attack their third brother. Chapter 205. Dustless, who was observing in the dark, frowned. Orochimaru was still the same, he didn't change at all. From the beginning to the end he still yearned for the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. It's my fault. After a while Wu Chen's eyes narrowed into slits. If it weren't for Orochimaru, Jiraiya and Tsunade, this old guy wouldn't have been so obsessed with the Sharingan. Even if he had to die he wouldn't be so obsessed with the Sharingan. To some extent, it's indeed Dustless's fault for showing the power of the Sharingan in front of Orochimaru. Hiss. Perhaps he felt that Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto and Haruno Sakura were insignificant ants. Orochimaru just casually summoned a huge python, hoping to use it to deal with Team 7. In the face of the unprecedented giant python, Uchiha Sasuke, who was always successful and neat, was uncharacteristically scared. But Uzumaki Naruto, who was known as the last place, turned fear into motivation and fought fiercely with the giant python summoned by Orochimaru. His will is good, he has the potential to become a strong man. Seeing that Uzumaki Naruto didn't retreat, Dustless secretly nodded. Now Uchiha Sasuke has no fighting power, but Uzumaki Naruto, who he despises the most, is in the limelight. Pucci. After several fierce fights, the giant snake didn't have much advantage. Instead, Uzumaki Naruto had the upper hand. The giant snake's body was left with many deep red wounds left by the dagger. It looked particularly ferocious. Hiss. The giant snake stared at Uzumaki Naruto angrily, its eyes emitting cold, murderous intent. But it was obvious that this beast was extremely smart. It knew that Uzumaki Naruto wasn't easy to deal with. The snake's head suddenly twisted, looking at Uchiha Sasuke. Its eyes flashed with cunning, and its huge, unyielding body swooped straight down. Obviously, this beast wasn't stupid. It knew the meaning of pick the weak persimmon. So it chose to attack Uchiha Sasuke first. The giant snake's bloody mouth opened at a 180-degree angle, and an incomparably fishy smell came out of its cavity. Its sharp fangs were as dense and sharp as a shark's sawtooth, shining with an invincible cold light, and could easily tear and bite a person's body. In the blink of an eye, it arrived beside Uchiha Sasuke and mercilessly swallowed him. Get out of my way. Bang! Uzumaki Naruto rushed over at the critical moment, and at the same time he kicked Sasuke with all his strength. Sasuke fell on the thick tree trunk. He took out several sharp kunai in his hand and threw them like a rainstorm, heading straight toward the scary snake head. Puchi! The flickering kunai penetrated deep into the serpent's body, and scarlet flowers immediately splashed in the air. The serpent's ferocious body became even more terrifying. Ao ao ao. An unprecedented pain suddenly spread all over his body. The giant snake's eyes were filled with blood, and it swung its huge head at Naruto mercilessly. Bang! Naruto, who was caught off guard, was immediately thrown away by the powerful force. Although he had blocked the attack with a kunai in front of his chest, he was still hit by the beast regardless of the casualties. He flew in the same direction as Uchiha Sasuke. That kid is really good. If he wasn't Sasuke, he would be a good reincarnation. Orochimaru saw Uzumaki Naruto's every move and immediately cast an admiring look at Naruto. Some people dared to stand up and resist in the face of death, and some people like Uchiha Sasuke had their will collapse. The giant snake opened its big mouth, revealing its sharp fangs again, and rushed forward madly. It seemed that it wanted to bite Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke. Get out of my way, you annoying clown. Hurry up and run for your life. Standing up and wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Uzumaki Naruto looked at the sluggish Uchiha Sasuke with disdain, and sneered contemptuously. It seems that you're done, my great genius. A piece of trash like you wants to avenge your parents? Dream on, you useless coward. Hearing this, Uchiha Sasuke's expression became more dazed. His eyes suddenly flashed with a strong bloody light, and he inevitably remembered the tragic scene of the destruction of the Uchiha clan. The incomparably cold voice seemed to echo in his ears, making Uchiha Sasuke's nerves reflexively stood up. My foolish little brother, if you want to kill me, then hate me, detest me. Then live an ugly life. When you have the same eyes as mine, come to me. Shut up, trash. Today I'll show you who's the incompetent last place and who's the incompetent coward. The gloomy killing intent broke out, and Uchiha Sasuke's small face was covered with a layer of ice. Even the kunai in his hand was frozen. It can be seen that Uzumaki Naruto's previous words touched Uchiha Sasuke a lot. This kid really impressed me. I didn't expect him to have this kind of attribute. He even knows how to provoke others. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto with a smile on his face, Dustless's eyes rippled, and he looked at Uzumaki Naruto with a lot of interest. Locking his eyes on Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless shook his head. He may not understand in this life. This may be Uzumaki Naruto's personality charm, far beyond any kind of ninjutsu, and has the wonderful power to turn something rotten into something magical. Uchiha Sasuke didn't disappoint Uzumaki Naruto. The two of them finally spent a lot of effort to kill this unkillable anaconda. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto also exhausted their strength, lying on the ground and gasping for breath. Orochimaru, who was hiding in the dark, also came out. It seemed that he intended to kill these two boys himself. Chapter 206. Orochimaru walked out of the forest with a pale face. The previous woman's skin was also peeled off, revealing his original appearance, which was neither a man nor a woman. His whole person was full of gloomy aura, giving people a particularly depressing feeling. Who the hell are you? Get out of here if you don't want to die. Uchiha Sasuke's pupils suddenly shrank, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. The person in front of him was definitely not a good person. In this forest of death, except for enemies, there were no allies. He was afraid that this man with a pale face was definitely here to snatch their scroll. Kid, your temper is quite bad. Orochimaru looked at the hot-tempered Uchiha Sasuke and couldn't help but stare at him, or simply at Uchiha Sasuke's body. His snake eyes flashed with a bright light from time to time, like a beast encountering a beauty. He was particularly excited. What a beautiful and incomparable body. Although it's not as good as your two brothers, it will definitely surpass Itachi in the future. Orochimaru's eyes shone with a wolf-like light. His naked eyes seemed to strip people's clothes, and he could easily see the inside of the body. Seeing those eyes that wanted to eat him alive, Sasuke felt a chill and unconsciously got goosebumps, but his ears still keenly caught the words, "Your two brothers. Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Itachi?" I knew that Kakashi was lying to me. Uchiha Dustless really didn't die. You actually know the traces of the two of them. Seems that you are also an unusual guy. Looking at Orochimaru, Uchiha Sasuke asked in a hoarse voice. Even because of excitement his body was slightly trembling. Sasuke knew that Orochimaru's origin was not simple. Kakashi's concept of Dustless and Itachi was extremely vague. However, Orochimaru in front of him gave Sasuke the feeling that he knew everything about Dustless and Itachi. Not only do I know the two of them, during the Third World War I also teamed up with Dustless to fight against the Rock Village. Later when I defected from Konoha and joined the Akatsuki, your second brother Uchiha Itachi also joined, but in the end I failed to attack him and had to leave the Akatsuki. Speaking of which, the grudge between me and you three brothers is not small. Orochimaru said bluntly with a bit of melancholy and unwillingness in his tone. Losing to Dustless may be acceptable, but as one of the Sannin, Orochimaru also has pride. Losing to Uchiha Itachi really made him lose face. Especially now that he was reduced to sneak attacking their third brother, Orochimaru felt extremely aggrieved. You bastard snake, you can't beat Sasuke's big brother and second brother, so you sneak attacked us, you're really shameless. No matter how ignorant Uzumaki Naruto was, he knew what Orochimaru meant. Orochimaru obviously wanted to pick a soft persimmon and obviously he came for Sasuke. Looking at Sasuke's pale face, Orochimaru smiled slightly, shrugged and said very frankly, "You're right, I did come for the soft persimmon." Orochimaru also didn't think that losing to Uchiha Dustless or Uchiha Itachi was shameful. Not to mention him, I'm afraid that even Pain, who has Rinnegan, may not be able to defeat these two brothers. This is not a shameful thing. Orochimaru, who has lived for most of his life, understood this truth. You bastard. Sasuke's face was even more ugly. Orochimaru's words were undoubtedly a slap in his face. It was a blatant statement that because he was too weak Orochimaru came for him. To be honest, as long as I move my finger I can easily crush you to death. You're really weak and pitiful. Not to mention Uchiha Dustless, you're not even qualified to face Uchiha Itachi. Slightly disappointed, Orochimaru glanced at Sasuke a few times inside. But soon, Orochimaru's decadence disappeared, and he looked at Sasuke with shining eyes. Although your strength is not worthy of praise, it's extremely bad, but I, Orochimaru, will accept the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. As soon as Orochimaru's voice fell, his body was like a snake's nest and countless white snakes crawled out of Orochimaru's body. This guy's jutsu is really disgusting. It seems that the serpent just now was also summoned by him. Uzumaki Naruto looked at Orochimaru and saw saliva falling from his mouth, and his body trembled unnaturally. It was the first time he saw such a disgusting jutsu, and it was as disgusting as the serpent that he and Sasuke just killed. Naruto, don't be careless, this guy is not simple. Looking at the dense group of snakes on the ground, Sasuke frowned slightly, and at the same time he jumped to the tree behind him to avoid the snakes below. Uzumaki Naruto did the same. Katon, great fireball jutsu. The blazing and powerful fireballs spewed out from his mouth, instantly annihilating the snakes below. The fire wave swallowed the snakes, forming a large vacuum area. However, there were too many small snakes. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto were already exhausted. They had spent a lot of effort in the previous battle, and now they really didn't have the strength to fight with Orochimaru, the Snake King. Oh, it seems that you've reached your limit. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto, Dustless nodded slightly. It's good that they could reach this point. After all, people's energy is limited. Seeing you two so embarrassed, I'll be merciful and save you. Uzumaki Naruto, you have to thank me in the future. With a strange smile on his face, Dustless formed a seal with one hand. In Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, the Senjutsu, Bright God Gate, that Dustless used to bind Kyuubi loosened. Chapter 207. Orochimaru looked at Sasuke coldly, his body suddenly became like rubber, and his head was strangely elongated. He opened his mouth ferociously and bit Sasuke's neck. Naruto, there's something wrong with this guy. I suggest we retreat immediately. Staring gloomily at Orochimaru, Sasuke's heart sank, and he couldn't help but want to retreat. There's a saying that it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. There's no need to fight to the death with this snake. Just as he was about to pull Uzumaki Naruto to retreat, Uchiha Sasuke suddenly realized that Uzumaki Naruto beside him seemed to have changed into a different person in an instant. His whole body was filled with the smell of disaster, like the culprit who destroyed the world in prehistoric times. The boundless murderous aura almost made his soul collapse. All the air around him was sucked away. Uchiha Sasuke had a feeling of suffocation. Ayo ayo ayo. The harsh beast's roar exploded like a bomb, setting off a strong wave of air. Uchiha Sasuke, who was next to Uzumaki Naruto, was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. He was directly shaken by the powerful force and his internal organs were trembling. Looking around, Uzumaki Naruto's body was shrouded in red light, and his appearance could no longer be seen clearly. His body was covered in magma-like crimson chakra, and his four tails danced with the wind, creating strong ripples in the air. So that's how it is. So it's that little brat Kyuubi. Minato's child? No wonder he's so extraordinary at such a young age. Turns out that his parents are famous figures. Suddenly, Namake's Minato's appearance appeared in his mind, and he subconsciously compared it with Uzumaki Naruto's appearance. There are indeed some similarities. Damn it, how did Naruto become so strong in an instant? Uchiha Sasuke, who was shaken by Uzumaki Naruto's explosive power, looked extremely ugly. He looked at Uzumaki Naruto, who was wrapped in negative chakra and eroded like a beast. His heart was filled with mixed feelings, jealousy, unwillingness, happiness and all kinds of emotions. Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto were teammates, but they were also competitors. How could Uchiha Sasuke be willing to accept this? Ayo ayo ayo. Boom boom boom. The four-tailed Uzumaki Naruto completely lost his mind, and fox-like fangs grew on both sides of his mouth, and he roared towards the sky. The roar of the sky was mixed with strong chakra fluctuations, like a level 10 hurricane raging, laughing unscrupulously in the sky. It felt like it could destroy the world with a flick of its finger. The chakra waves spread like a volcanic eruption, spreading to every corner of the world. Konoha's high-level officials rushed over immediately. They still haven't forgotten the previous 2 times when Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Damned brat, he was too careless. Orochimaru's face was livid. Looking at Uzumaki Naruto, who was transformed into Yonbi, his pale face was filled with murderous intent. He couldn't wait to tear Naruto into pieces. After Uzumaki Naruto made such a ruckus, Konoha's high-level officials and a large number of ninjas will definitely rush to support him. Orochimaru's plan to forcibly abduct Uchiha Sasuke will be ruined. He stared at Uzumaki Naruto angrily, and the majestic chakra also began to rage and a strong murderous intent broke out of his body. He also wanted to see if the legendary Kyuubi was really so evil. Oh, this is interesting, you want to fight Kyuubi with your own strength. Orochimaru, you are too naive. Seeing that Orochimaru didn't retreat and his chakra was desperately leaking out, Dustless suddenly sneered. It's not that he didn't think highly of Orochimaru. Orochimaru may have no problem with other bijou, but there is a difference between Kyuubi's power and other bijous. Kyuubi's full eruption can completely crush any bijou. Since you want to see Kyuubi's power so much, well, I have enough time today, let's see what makes you different from others. Wu Chen's eyes suddenly turned cold as he looked at the duel that was about to take place. Ow. Ow. Orochimaru slammed to the ground and his big mouth immediately opened. The corners of his mouth twisted violently, and his throat was the same as if something was drilling out of his lungs. The scene was particularly horrifying. No matter what jutsu you use, it's so disgusting and unsightly, just like you, Orochimaru. Looking faintly at the thousands of big snakes gushing out of Orochimaru's mouth, Dustless was unmoved. He was no longer the naive child who didn't know anything. After so many years in the shinobi world, his shrewdness has reached a level where he won't change his expression even if Mount Tai collapses in front of him. Sweeping away, countless thick snakes crawled out of Orochimaru's mouth, rushing towards Uzumaki Naruto. When approaching Uzumaki Naruto, the sea of snakes all opened their big mouths, revealing dazzling sharp swords. Inferior ninjutsu, but it's quite a match for you, Orochimaru. Leisurely closing his eyes, Dustless wasn't worried that Uzumaki Naruto would be killed. The sea of swords gathered by countless swords seemed to be unparalleled, but it was a trivial matter for Kyubi. Looking up, he saw Uzumaki Naruto raised his palm full of spikes, looking at the snakes rushing towards him without fear, and then lightly patted the ground. Boom. The solid ground was suddenly torn apart like a piece of paper. The long and narrow cracks centered on Uzumaki Naruto spread crazily in all directions, like a spider web, swallowing the ground, and scarlet light gushed out from the depths of the ground. The unstoppable sea of snakes seemed to have met its natural enemy, and was easily swallowed up by the red light. It was so simple that not even a sliver of the snake was left. Chapter 208. Orochimaru looked at the wide ground and the crack that was swallowing him. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. At the same time, he didn't forget to step back to avoid being swallowed by the crack. The red light surging deep in the ground is no joke. It's the blazing chakra formed by Kyubi's blazing chakra. Even if it doesn't erase you, you will end up either dead or injured just like the snakes just now. This is the power of Kyubi, worthy of being the most powerful tailed beast, and it doesn't seem to be at full strength. Orochimaru quickly pulled hundreds of meters away from Uzumaki Naruto, and his ugly face calmed down. He stared at Uzumaki Naruto and his throat choked unconsciously. The four thick crimson tails behind him undoubtedly explained everything. If the strength of a tailed beast is calculated by the tail, Uzumaki Naruto in front of him didn't even use half of Kyubi's strength. They are both tailed beasts. Why is the difference in strength so big? No wonder that group of monsters will change their faces when they talk about Kyubi. Orochimaru said to himself hoarsely, while looking at Uzumaki Naruto solemnly. It was the first time he experienced the power of Kyubi. If he had to find a suitable enemy for Naruto, he felt that pain in the Akatsuki organization is the most suitable. This was because both of them had unfathomable strength. Are you still going to struggle? His pupils dilated, shooting out in different light. Wuxia stared at Orochimaru, who had no intention of retreating, casting a hopeless look. If Orochimaru can defeat Kyubi, then the tailed beasts in the world may have died long ago. It seems that he won't back down without suffering a little. Dustless looked at Orochimaru speechlessly. He was obviously looking for trouble, but since someone is not afraid of death, Dustless doesn't mind watching a good show carefully. Oh! Seeing that Orochimaru didn't retreat, Uzumaki Naruto roared at the sky, and seemed to perceive that his dignity was challenged. His crimson body swayed with countless chakra balls of different colors, about the size of a thumb. The granular chakra energy balls slowly floated in the air. At a glance, there were quite a number of them. Orochimaru was slightly stunned and looked at the small balls in the sky in surprise. Feeling the negative emotions contained in them, his entire soul trembled abnormally, and his hair stood on end. Once this huge force gathered, it could easily tear him into pieces. Such an evil chakra of hatred and negative chakra is not something that can be controlled by humans. Although there are some differences, it should be a Bijidama. Staring at the Bijidama Naruto, Orochimaru didn't dare to be arrogant and carefully guarded against Naruto. Although the technique in front of him was different from Bijidama, it was more powerful than it. During the Third Shinobi World War, Orochimaru once had the honor of fighting against the Rock Village's Jinchuriki, and learned how powerful the Bijidama is. Countless energy balls floated in the air, circling around Naruto like raindrops. Under Orochimaru's surprised gaze, the Bijidama Naruto opened his big mouth, revealing his sharp fangs. His mouth was like a black hole in the depths of the universe, emitting a majestic suction force. Sucking the energy balls in the sky to his mouth, constantly compressing them until they finally became a palm-sized black ball. Uzumaki Naruto didn't hesitate to swallow it, and his whole body instantly swelled uncontrollably like a hydrogen balloon. His whole body was filled with indescribable irritation, like a volcano about to erupt. The unprecedented destructive power made Orochimaru's face change immediately. Without hesitation, he bit his finger and used his strongest defense at present. He was sure that it was definitely a ninjutsu similar to Bijidama. Summoning Jutsu, Triple Rashomon. Kakaka. The ground suddenly burst open and the defensive walls of the fanged grimace rose from the ground. There were a total of 3 sides, and above them, there was an ancient aura of the netherworld. It was like the door of Azura from the depths of hell, and it gave people an extremely gloomy feeling. Especially the huge mouth of Rashomon, it seemed to be mocking the opponent's weakness and weakness. This old guy also learned the first Hokage's jutsu. It's not easy. He's worthy of being an expert in forbidden jutsu. Looking thoughtfully at the 3 defensive walls on the ground, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. 12 years ago when he led the masked man Uchiha Obito to attack Konoha, he defeated Hashirama and absorbed his Senjutsu chakra. Now most of Hashirama's ninjutsu including Mokuton and Senjutsu, are used by Dustless. Dustless can naturally use the jutsu used by Orochimaru, but he didn't have the opportunity to use it. Whoosh! A huge beam of crimson light spewed out from Uzumaki Naruto's mouth. The devilish beam of destruction was overwhelming, raging in the vast sky and dyed the sky crimson. The harsh roar resounded through the sky and Orochimaru, who was behind the triple Rashomon, was dizzy, and the area covered was almost impossible to estimate. Boom boom boom, the ground along the way burst open and long and narrow ditches were elongated. The ground was scorched. Looking at it, the Rashomon in front was wiped out by the destructive force, and Orochimaru's head was inserted deep into the ground. Even the mountain behind Orochimaru was raised. Well, this seems to be my Gaara. No, this is Shikaku's chakra. Dustless, who was calm, suddenly opened his eyes and felt another restless bloody killing in the air, and the violent chakra with boundless hatred. He was slightly stunned. This chakra was Shikaku's. After all, about 15 years ago, Dustless personally experienced the strength of Shikaku. For the time being, I will let you be free for 2 more years. As for 2 years later, I will naturally seal you in the ghetto mazo. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The reason why Shikaku's chakra broke out was probably because he felt the chakra of his old enemy, Kyuubi, and remembered the past grievances, so he couldn't control the eruption of the tailed beast's power. Chapter 209. Ka ka ka. Violent waves suddenly surged from the depths of the ground, as if an incomparably thick giant python was sneaking around. The ground was undulating up and down, like a prehistoric giant beast that was sneaking around in the deep sea. It stirred up ripples, but no traces of it could be seen. However, the beast's target didn't seem to be Uzumaki Naruto. Boom boom boom. Orochimaru's head suddenly drilled out of the ground and was exposed to the sun. Surprisingly, Orochimaru's body was stretched hundreds of meters long. The other half of his body was still 100 meters away, and his head instantly appeared behind Uchiha Sasuke. His strong and powerful neck was like a snake wrapping around Uchiha Sasuke, making him unable to break free. Orochimaru opened his big mouth, revealing 2 sharp fangs, and without hesitation he bit towards Uchiha Sasuke's neck. Undoubtedly, Uchiha Sasuke, who couldn't resist, was just a fish on the chopping board. He was as fragile as a baby in swaddling clothes. Puchi. As Orochimaru pulled out his teeth, it was clear that Uchiha Sasuke's neck had a crimson mark, and the fangs penetrated his body, which was extremely terrifying. Hey, how do you feel? Look at you, you seem to be very unwilling. Also, if someone has 2 deified brothers on top of his head, he will not be able to stand up. Orochimaru smiled gloomily. His hoarse voice was full of contempt and disdain and even a little sympathy. Uchiha Sasuke had 2 powerful brothers, Uchiha Dustless and Uchiha Itachi, and Uchiha Sasuke was indeed a bit sad. I have left the power of Orochimaru in your body. If you want to surpass your brothers, come to me. I am Orochimaru, one of the Sannin, and I can make you stronger just like Uchiha Itachi. Orochimaru can see that Uchiha Sasuke is an ambitious kid, so he planted the power of Curse of Heaven in his body, which can enhance Uchiha Sasuke's power, and he will be tempted by power to join him. Orochimaru originally wanted to say that as long as he followed him he could obtain power beyond Uchiha Dustless, but after thinking about it he quickly threw it aside and replaced it with Uchiha Itachi. At this point, Orochimaru didn't expect to capture Uchiha Sasuke. He could feel that a large number of Konoha's ninjas were coming towards him. Damn it, what the hell is this thing, you bastard? Is your name Orochimaru? What a disgusting name, I will not let you go. Uchiha Sasuke looked at Orochimaru's snake head and gnashed his teeth in hatred. The severe pain spread from his neck to his whole body almost made him faint, and he roared at Orochimaru angrily, "One day I will tear you to pieces." Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Sasuke with a smile. As the creator of Curse of Heaven, he naturally knew the horror of this curse better than anyone else. As long as Uchiha Sasuke wants to control this power, he will definitely come to him. "You want to tear me to pieces with this level of power? Ridiculous, ignorance has a limit. Living in a peaceful village like Konoha, you will never become as strong as your two brothers. Uchiha Sasuke, you are too stupid." Orochimaru didn't hesitate to attack Sasuke. If it weren't for Uchiha Sasuke's body, he would definitely obliterate this annoying arrogant insect in an instant. Ouch! A ferocious roar exploded in the sky, and a blazing air wave spread out like a cannonball, surging to every corner of the sky. Suddenly looking up, it was Uzumaki Naruto who swooped down fiercely. Due to the fact that the force was too strong, the air waves that were thrown out caused the ground to collapse. What a haunting little brat. Orochimaru quickly retracted his neck and looked at Naruto with uncertainty. He immediately noticed that Konoha's ninjas were getting closer and closer. His heart inevitably calmed down. No matter how hard he fought, he couldn't escape from Konoha's group attack, especially with the Kyuubi. "Goodbye, Sarutobi-sensei, the next time we meet it will be your death." Orochimaru viciously looked at the ninja galloping from the distance. His murderous aura was overflowing. His kindness to the Sandaime has disappeared since the moment he betrayed Konoha, and now he hates him even more and he can't wait to get rid of him. "And you?" His eyes fell on Uzumaki Naruto again. Orochimaru looked at him deeply and quickly disappeared. After all, Konoha's ninjas are not to be trifled with, and there are extraordinary masters among them. "Stupid Orochimaru, I really don't know where your strong confidence comes from, but do you think you still have a chance?" Staring at Orochimaru's voice, Dustless's mouth curled into a cold smile, then looked at Uzumaki Naruto and printed with one hand again. "Senjutsu, Bright God Gate." In Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world, a red round piece of wood fell from the sky. Kyuubi, who thought that he was going to break out of the prison, was not happy for long, but he was suppressed here. As for the projection left by Wuxia in Uzumaki Naruto's spiritual world many years ago, it disappeared because of the exhaustion of chakra. "It seems that it's time to catch that girl." His right eye suddenly turned blue and Dustless's sight swept in all directions. The insight of the Tensigen is much stronger than the Byakugan. The situation within a radius of 10 kilometers was exposed to Dustless's eyes. The penetration ability of the Tensigen is extremely strong, and the world in Dustless's sight is almost a plane without any obstacles. "It seems that I found her." Staring straight ahead, Dustless's body suddenly burst out, and the golden rainbow cut through the void. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to catch and it was almost instantaneous. However, Hyuga Hinata and others seem to be in trouble. It seems that they are fighting with Gaara of the Sand Hidden Village, and they are almost at a disadvantage. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.